Guten Morgen, meine liebe Freunde. Welcome to the ASTROLABE. Brought to you by King Pilled. It's good to see you guys this morning. The Twitters are a poppin'. The mythologies are a droppin'. It's a good time to be alive. All the conversations are jumping right now. I really wonder what it's like to be a normie and like not be tapped into any of this sort of stuff at all, because I can't go anywhere on the internet right now without being exposed to the official conversation that is a part of the official narrative right now. And I just imagine what it's like being some guy, I don't know, you work at a gas station or I don't know, you do like traveling sales or something, and you're just not tuned into the narrative whatsoever, just doing your thing. No clue that the official mythology, the state religion of the West for the last 80 years is developing existential cracks. I don't know. I like, on one hand, I'm kind of jealous. Be kind of imagine just living that life. I kind of remember what it was like to have that life. Just kind of doing whatever you're doing and not really paying attention to the official happenings. But at the same time, it's also really fun to be right on the cutting edge of everything and to know what's happening long before it does, and be able to make moves and make predictions on that basis. Does Fox News address it or ignore Tucker? Well, that's a good question. I'm sure that they're going to wind up having to address it on some downstream way. There's going to be some evolution of the conversation on top of the conversation that they'll ultimately tap into, and I'm sure it'll get there somewhere. But it was interesting. I've known that the official cable news channels are just down all over the place, that they're having a terrible time of it. But then when Sean Ryan said that he was talking to someone in the know, this is in his conversation with Kash Patel, which we covered on the show yesterday, and he said that what he's heard is that CNN's like average viewership at a given hour is like 50,000 people. That's crazy. 50,000 people. That's a large internet live stream, but it's not like one of the biggest. It's not even close to one of the biggest. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe 70th percentile, 80th percentile, somewhere in there. I'd imagine that Fox is probably still doing better than CNN. I think Fox always has, and I would expect that they always will. That's my perception. I don't have any numbers or anything to back that up. But that's also part, I think, of Fox being basically the only show in town for someone who wants to watch a cable news show and doesn't want it to be just abject, over-the-top regime propaganda. Yeah, Patrick says that's 20K smaller than shows like Timcast. Yeah, I'd imagine that Fox, if CNN's at 50,000, my perception would be that Fox is probably like 150,000, somewhere in there. So it's still a pretty large market share, and it because of its positioning with respect to the regime, it's still gonna it's still upstream of a lot of things, but it's not gonna last for a whole lot longer. Now Elon's debuting XTV. So there's going to be an XTV app. This is going in the direction that I've been anticipating all along, which is that ultimately the live streams that happen on X are going to be the new news channels. You're the creators who are on X, who are streaming there, like they're ahead of what the new model is going to be, which is going to be kind of a hybrid of the podcasting world and the cable news world, sort of merging into the live stream world. And so being able to, like, think about all of your boomer relatives who have their smart TV, like they've gotten to the point where they've got a smart TV and they had their grandkids come over and teach them which buttons to push just to get to the one thing to open up the app that they want, and then they just kind of let it play. Well, now they can open up the X app. And you can tap them into your favorite streamer, and they'll be like, "Oh, look at that. Thomas777 is on. Let me listen to what he has to say." This is how the boomer waffen really get activated. So I think the first creators who start doing 24-hour streams are going to lead the charge. If you can get a creator or a cohort of creators that start doing 24-hour streams on X, they're going to be ahead of the curve. I think that's probably where it's going. Okay. Kate says some expert will probably come on Fox to spin what Daryl talked about and repudiate it, as to say, questioned around Churchill's reputation of surface lately, but he's actually a great guy because XYZ. Yeah. I think it'll be kind of like a tangential thing, but they won't refer to it directly because they definitely don't want to remind people. Whoever needs to be reminded that Tucker still exists and has a massive podcast, it's probably don't need to worry about reminding them, but they definitely don't want to be reminding people of their greatest opposition, their greatest competition. All right, let me get got to get the gum pillow in here so we can really get started. I don't know about you guys, but I don't do the whole like line up the arrows and pop the Zen thing off. I just muscle that bitch open. Just get open. Give it to me. I need it. All right. Do me a favor and hit the like button. We got 49 watching so far, 20 likes. Let's keep that. Let's see if we can keep that like 66%. 66.6. Let's do that. Can we keep it right at 2/3 as we go on up? Keep hitting the like button. And then I'm also streaming on X, so you can follow me there, Real King Pilled, and you can join the King Pilled Discord, kingpilled.com. That's the place to be. If you don't, if you just want to send some money and you don't want any strings attached, buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. That helps me keep doing this show every day. There was some suggestions that I saw in the live chat yesterday, and regarding a panel show, and I noticed those. I'm listening. I'm thinking about that. I'd like to figure out a way to be sort of creative or unique in the offering, but I think that would be an interesting thing to do. Have a regular King Pilled panel show. Might be kind of fun. I've got some people in mind that could be a part of that. So stay tuned. Perhaps something like that may come down the pipeline here eventually. Let's get started with the first one of the day. Of course, I have to go find it. Here it is. All right, just men being men. You know, this is you leave men alone, out away from civilization a little bit, and things go sideways quickly. And this is one of the great things about being a man.
With safety tips, like if you come to this fence over here.
Yep. This one.
Fuck! It's electric.
You're not supposed to touch it.
Don't touch it because it's electrified.
Why did you say that?
I was getting into it and you grabbed the fence. I pointed at the fence.
The fence can't be that bad.
It's electrocuted.
The cows.
Oh, it's electric. He's just from New Zealand. He's a pussy.
No, it keeps the cows in.
You think I'm not tougher than a cow?
Yes.
Cowbung, the baby. Fuck! What the fuck is that? Pikachu's in that fence, guys. Fucking.
That's for bulls, actually. Bull fence, more specifically.
Nah, I think I got a bad current. Let me try again.
Don't try again.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. Stop, you gotta go.
Woo! Bro, it's a fucking rush. Try it again, Jimmy. Try it again.
Don't.
Try it again. It's a fucking
Ah!
rush. It's a fucking rush, eh?
I don't know.
No, yep.
I'm not saying
Woo!
that was safety.
Been there, boys. Been there. Moldy Apple said, is that a red wall or is it CG? It is a kind of generic beige wall, but I've got red lights behind me that are, and I've got the light set such that it's I'm trying to make it look as much of like a solid color as possible. Trying to get the texture out of it. But if you zoom in on it when I'm full screen, you probably definitely see the texture of the wall. This is basically living in one of the generic cookie cutter starter homes. That I think it's a D.R. Horton home. Yeah, so it's just got the absolute shittiest paint imaginable. Like if we get a stain on the wall, we there's essentially nothing we can do because the attempt to clean the stain off the wall will just immediately start removing paint. It's absolutely terrible. But I don't expect we're going to be here a whole lot longer. So I haven't bothered to do anything about it. It's not our house, so. That's for the next owner to be concerned with. This one here had me just absolutely rolling. J Local, Powerful Mutual says, me leaving the local Mexican restaurant after having 2 Modelos. Watching this one here for 38 seconds, this one took me back a little bit. You know, I haven't really sat and watched some of this old George Bush footage. You know, now this is what, 20 years ago or something. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but watching it took me back, and then the caption just really puts it together.
I wish you a happy Cinco de Mayo. Quiero los bendiga a los Estados Unidos y también Mexico. Honored you're here. Very good job.
Thank you.
Say it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Oh! Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
All right, get me the fuck out of here. Dios te bendiga. What's up, Saw700 says, hi, King-Pilled, loyal listener writing from Tegucigalpa. Ooh, we've got a Honduran in the chat. Good to see you, friend. Thank you for being here. I've seen you in the past before. If I'm not mistaken, you are one of the like 3 women we have who watches. If I've misgendered you, if I thought you were someone that you're not, then I apologize. But it is a rumor that we've got some women out there who do watch King-Pilled, which is kind of funny because one of the topics we're going to be getting into later here today is the Foids. So apologies to the women. I will be speaking to the men. And you're welcome to come along for the ride if you'd like. Oh, I got to remember to keep these tabs open. I did do so yesterday after the show. I did the master thread of all the links. So going forward, every day as soon as I finish the Astrolabe, I'm taking all of the links and stuff that I shared, and I'm putting them into a master thread on Twitter, so you can go see them, watch them, share them, whatever. If you'd like to, if there's something, maybe sometimes I might read something, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. So I'll leave it for you guys to go into later. Lee Enfield. If you guys are on Twitter and you're not following Lee, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Lee is one of our greatest posters, one of the greatest posters of all time. So Aristophanes, himself a great poster, said, going to call unmarried liberal millennial women brides of the state from now on, a.k.a. bots. A bit more PC than childless cat ladies, but it works. And I was like, oh, that's a banger. This is good. Yeah, bots, brides of the state. And then Lee just comes soaring in. He says, this is good, but I would also raise the possibility of oinks. One income, no kids, SSRIs. Oh my God. Oinks. Unmarried liberal millennial women. You guys have your marching orders now. Officially, they are oinks. Saw700 said, yes, one of 3 women. Please share the post you read last week where Kryptos mentioned left-right distraction for plebs. Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember it. See if you could give me a little bit more information on it, or someone else if you remember which one we were talking about. And then I will, let me make a note for myself here that I'll go find that after the show and share it. So, Kryptos, what did she say here? Left, right, plebs. Okay. If any of you remember which one she's talking about and you could go find it before then you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, I'll see what I can do afterwards. Kryptos is another one of our greatest posters. All right. Man, okay, I forgot I had this one in here. Lining up all the great posters today. Logan Hall. Logan Hall is another one of our guys. I'm happy to share my most thoroughly written and researched article to date. A warning to disloyal R's and plan doubters. Read exclusively at The Blaze. This is the sheer effort he put into this is remarkable. And the Black Pillars have received a warning. A warning to Black Pillars. We are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
The black pill roughly translates to a belief that the world is doomed and meaningless and we could do nothing to fix the situation. Rejecting the black pill means rejecting pessimistic thoughts and recognizing that hope springs eternal. And that's it. That's the entire post. The comments are fantastic. They are absolutely spurging out. You can see who the Blaze TV comment section is definitely not drawn from Twitter. Question marks. What is your point, or is this some Democrat scam again? From Thomas Paine. Someone hit the enter button before the rest of it was done? What the heck is this? Wait, black pill, like red and blue pill. I think I understand. Maybe going after those with no hope to give them a sense of belonging and a hopeful outlook? Doing to them what's never been done before, give them hope and meaning? It's fascinating how much you can read into somebody's psychology by, so undefined here is taking the same general reading of it as Thomas Paine up here. Thomas Paine thinks it's some Democrat scam. Undefined is like doing to them what's never been done before. Does that mean, is this kind of like an inversion thing where actually you're going to give them hope and meaning? That's what you're coming for? And to think the Blaze removes my comments compared to this nonsense. And no, don't use nonsensical when nonsense will suffice. Nonsensical. This is such fantastic content. Can we give the author a thumbs down like we can like each other's posts? I guess this is what they call clickbait. I have not heard the term black pill, so can the author elaborate? Why use the image of President Trump surviving the left-wing deep state attack as the cover when the author could have used the still frame from the short video he attached? I guess Logan is trying to say he doesn't like President Trump in a passive-aggressive sort of way. He uses an image and a video to evoke an emotional response but fails to put in an editorial. Is this what subscribers are paying for? Logan, if you have an opinion of President Trump, please elaborate your position and why. How do we know this video is an official statement from his campaign and not a short AI clip written by one of the many techno-fascists in control of most of the re-education or media establishments? Is there context? I have yet to have seen a rally or video where President Trump did not clearly state policy objectives, talk about the current state of the union, or reference the malicious and anti-American actions of his political opponents. This level of soundbite obscurity is akin to Harris opening her mouth to emit a nonsensical cackle. Uh-oh, he said nonsensical. So instead, I will refer to one of my previous posts. My favorite video of Harris was back in 2019, where at one point in the Dem primaries, remember when the left pretended to have a process benefiting the choice of their candidate, of their misguided followers like a republic should? She said she believed the woman who said Biden sexually harassed them. Then the elites named her his VP. In a later interview, the media, Stephen Colbert, asked her about her comments about this, and she said, "It was a debate, giggle." Then Stephen asked the same question again, and she responded, "It was a debate, giggle." And then he hit post. He typed out that whole thing and then hit post. I love these people. This is incredible. They still exist. They're still out there. They're still out there furiously posting. They don't realize that everyone has moved away from the comment sections. This is like a throwback to like 10 years ago, the way the internet was before social media existed. Shout out to you, Michael35D. Thank you for providing me some great content today. Looks like we're going to be joined by the king of the Zoomers. This guy sounds like a libertarian. Jason, if your comment is more than 2 sentences, I ain't reading that shit. Post it on Substack. Oh, man. I love the boomers. Okay. I like this guy. Things you didn't know that you didn't know. 100% worth listening to. Speed this up a wee bit.
Things you didn't know that you didn't know, Part 9. 75% of the mass of the human brain is made up of a substance called myelin. And myelin is made up 100% by cholesterol. I'll leave it there. On a separate and completely unrelated subject, Alzheimer's disease is a neurodegenerative brain disease which destroys brain cells. Now, Alzheimer's never existed until 1979, and yet now it is one of the leading causes of death in Western societies. On a separate and completely unrelated subject, margarine was first invented in 1869, because Napoleon wanted a cheaper and longer lasting fat for his armies to travel with. It didn't gain.
Greetings, sir.
Hello.
How are you? Great for Spain. I was looking forward to seeing what it was going to be.
Well, I'm a little flustered, I must say, because you texted me the Restream link, and so I had to like look at my phone and then type it in with my 2 fingers up in the address bar. Making it difficult for
It's
me.
a hard life, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have sent it to you on Discord, but the problem is that if I open Discord, then I'm going to get inundated with like 5 million notifications all of a sudden, and sometimes it shares through on the screen share. So I just figured I'd make you deal with it. What do you think of margarine?
Margarine?
No, margarine.
I've never heard of margarine.
Oh,
Is that just French margarine?
well, this guy will tell us about it. I mean, he's the expert. He's the expert,
Okay.
so I'm accepting his pronunciation.
Popularity until the Second World War, when butter and other animal fats were scarce. Grew in popularity in the 50s, but by the 70s, the animal fats in it had been replaced with vegetable oils, because obviously animal fats contain saturated fat and a lot of cholesterol, so they wanted to offer a lower cholesterol alternative. I'll leave it there. On a separate and completely unrelated subject, margarine is 1 molecule away from being plastic. Now, as any chemist will tell you, 1 molecule can make a huge difference to the finished compound. Take ethanol and methanol, for example. 1 molecule difference, but very, very, very different results when ingested into the human body, right? So I'll leave it there. On a separate and completely unrelated subject, a simple experiment to do at home is to take a slab of butter, a slab of vegetable margarine with no animal fats in, and a slab of plastic, and stick them all outside in your garden and have a look what happens. Very quickly, all the wildlife in the area is going to be attracted to that butter, from the flies and the beetles and the mini beasts, through the birds, the rodents, all the way up to the apex predators, foxes, badgers, bears. If there happens to be no other wildlife around, then bacteria and mold will very, very quickly consume it, because it's easily digestible for all organic life forms. The margarine and the plastic will sit there for weeks. Nothing in nature will touch them. Try it. I'll leave it there. On a separate and completely unrelated subject, I invite all GPs out there to check your patients' medical records and see how many of your dementia and specifically Alzheimer's patients have been on statins and or low cholesterol diets for many years. I'll be very interested to hear your feedback in the comments, and I'll leave it there. Have a fabulous day.
Okay, so margarine, go.
It's trash.
Yes,
Garbage.
yes. If you guys are eating margarine, don't. Stop. Eat butter. Eat it by the spoonful if you'd like. Much, much better for you.
That's what I do. I discuss my wife that I'll just take bites out of butter sticks.
Uh-huh.
Or like if I get the Amish butter, I'll just take spoonfuls out. Shit's so good.
Yeah. You can like, this is one of the things we had our schizo stream last week. And Robert, our schizo dentist, came in and talked to us about physiognomy and such. And Taylor asked him about oil pulling with coconut oil. And he was kind of ambivalent on it, but he said he suggested doing it with butter. He said he would do it with butter. Butter would be better. Just mouthful of butter and swish it around for a little while, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't thought about doing that before, but I think I'm going to try it.
Let's see. Ryan Isaac said, I'd rather eat no butter on fast days than margarine. I agree. When it comes to the seed oils, I just don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
If I have the choice between like, hey, I haven't eaten in 2 days and here's, I don't know, a gas station tornado deep fried in vegetable oil and just not eating, I'll just be hungry.
Yeah, I've found that my teeth are just a mess at this point, but if I eat anything with seed oils in it, yes, it makes my teeth hurt.
You know what's interesting about that is like, I've noticed if I'm like eating the slop regularly, You know, it doesn't really affect me. I think you kind of adapt to it. But if I take a few days off or a week off, or if I'm like fasting or something like that, and then I don't know, as I'm occasionally want to do in my instances of low impulse control, eat an entire Little Caesars hot and ready pizza in my car on the way home from work.
Yes.
I noticed that I'm basically like, yeah, my teeth start hurting. I feel like fat and inflamed, and basically fall into like a mini depression for like a week. Like the shit's not good. It messes with everything. For me, particularly my mood is where I notice it the most.
I've enjoyed your descriptions before of we've been on the phone when you pull up, the working man's tradition. You get off work and you go get yourself a Little Caesars pizza, and then you pull into the parking lot, and there's like a handful of different guys who just got off work who are just sitting in their car, just like a little bit of quiet and peace for a few minutes. Let me stuff my face with some Zog slop before I go home and enter the new battlefield.
Go to the gas station or the grocery store or Little Caesars, wherever you go. If you just like park and look around, you'll see dudes just in their cars eating like chocolate cake by themselves in silence.
Real quick, another shout out to Saw700. She says, I use your rants and content to write my newspaper column sometimes, which is read mostly by boomers. You are doing the Lord's work, ma'am. That's fantastic. It's good to know that I'm sitting here yelling into a microphone and that there's Honduran boomers that are being impacted by the things that I say. That's great. There was another one here. Let's see. Taylor Brown says coconut oil makes the teeth feel good. Yeah, that's why I've done it. I don't know whether it's actually doing anything really productive or constructive for my teeth, but I've noticed that anytime, especially if I've been eating shitty and then my teeth are aching, if I swish with coconut oil for 15 or 20 minutes, make sure you spit it out if you do that. But I've swished with it for 15 or 20 minutes. It has a soothing effect to my mouth and teeth. It just makes everything feel better, probably because it's anti-inflammatory.
My wife also cooks amazing meals, but that doesn't stop me from eating an entire Little Caesars hot and ready pizza in my car. These are like mutually exclusive things in my head. I can eat the pizza and then come home and enjoy my wife's great cooking. But I'm not doing the pizza in lieu of my wife's cooking. It's a both and thing.
Is that the secret to maintaining the twink physique? Eat the hot and ready Little Caesars pizza entirely in the vehicle on the way home, and then go home and eat a delicious wife cooked meal.
Well, you see, like the entire Little Caesars hot and ready pepperoni pizza, if you trust their nutrition information, is right about kind of like my basal metabolic rate. So I can like eat one pizza, I can down a whole pizza, and that's like all I can eat that day. Assuming I were like just at rest. So it's actually a pretty simple way. It's not, I do not recommend this, but it's a pretty simple way to like, for me to, when it comes to like counting calories and stuff like that, I just know like, instead of having to like measure everything and then, I got to scan this and I got to look up this thing. It's just like, I can have one pizza a day. That's what I'll do. I'll just eat a pizza and I'm good.
Fitness tips with Cooper.
Yeah, right.
Fitness whole pizza in your mouth.
And if you're bigger than me, like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't actually know how tall I am anymore. Because like, okay. When I first got my license, I was like 5'7", and every time I've gone to renew my license, I've added an inch. So I think I'm up to like 5'10" right now. I am not 5'10". But I don't remember what I am. It's like 5'8" or something like that, 5'9", somewhere in there. 5'8", something like that. In any case, if you're bigger than me, taller, maybe you're not a twink, you could probably lose weight if you just ate a whole pizza every day from Little Caesars.
Yeah, it'd be cheap too. I mean, not $5
below
anymore.
Your maintenance,
but...
Yeah, dude, I missed that. It used to be $5. It's actually good that they're getting more expensive so that I'm not eating them all the time.
Yeah.
I haven't actually had a pizza in a while, but that's like my weak spot, dude. Those hot. I love Little Caesars.
You know what I've learned recently is that Sam's Club pizza is much better than Costco pizza.
I've not had either.
Yeah, Costco pizza's all right. It's extremely cheesy. It is just exceptionally cheesy and greasy, and you just hold it up and the grease just drips off of it. But the crust and just the overall flavor of the Sam's Club pizza is better. I've never really been a Sam's Club person, but Amy's gone
I'm
there
just
a few
a
times
fan of
recently.
pizza, man. I love all pizza. I do not discriminate when it comes to pizza unless you put like olives. Like, okay, not olives is fine. Some olives, like a couple of olives per slice, that's good. If you're like my wife and who just has like a jar of green olives just dumped on top of the pizza and spread out, it's disgusting. I don't know how she eats that shit, but I think she does it to keep me from eating her pizza.
Mm-hmm.
She just loads it up with olives because she knows I won't touch it. But I like, whether it's Little Caesars, whether it's Speedway gas station pizza, whether it's you're going down to Cagino's and spending $30 on a Chicago-style deep dish with extra cheese and extra pepperoni, as I'm wont to do on occasion, I love pizza. I'll eat it.
What about pineapple?
I'll eat it. I'm not a fan.
Pineapple is my favorite topping on pizza. I will stand on this mountain alone. I don't care. I will listen to my creed and eat my pineapple pizza.
Whatever. Okay.
Jihad Jason says, these are the mystic forest-dwelling wizards I was told about from ancient lore. Yes, I love this type of guy on the internet. The old dude who has his channel that he keeps up, that he has his niche topics that he likes to talk about.
Cowboy dude.
Yeah.
Ever see that guy?
Or the dude we played the video the other day of the guy of the old like boomer dude with the speed bag. They'll be live streaming their shit to one person. They don't care. This is their passion. This is their deep autism, and they want to share it with the world. And they don't care how many people are listening.
See, the problem with pineapple on pizza, I think, is it adds a sweetness that I don't think is appropriate for pizza. Because when I eat pizza, I want cheesy and I want peppery and savory and all of these things, and then adding sweet, it's like, have you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever like get in the fridge and grab, you're just like trying things and you're mixing things and you mix like milk and grape juice and you're like, oh, this is going to be awesome because I love milk and I love grape juice, and then you drink it and it's disgusting.
Well, see, for me, I don't really dislike the milk and grape juice combination, except for the fact that I had a really bad puke experience with grape soda when I was like, I don't know, 12 maybe. And ever since then, artificial grape flavor just hits that I kind of feel like I'm drinking puke every time I drink anything with an artificial grape flavor.
Okay, so I want to ask you about like NyQuil and cold medicine and stuff like that. With the artificial like berry flavors.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather just be sick. I'd rather just have like the flu than drink that shit. I have to be really, really sick to be able to like.
So, do you like Dr. Pepper?
I used to, not so much. I'm not super into sweets, unless it's like juice, like citrus, like orange juice or something like that. I'm not a very big sweet guy, so things that are like super sugary don't really do it for me. So I used to really be into Dr. Pepper. I haven't had Dr. Pepper in forever. I did try one earlier this year, and I was like, this isn't what... My taste buds have changed. Plus, I started... Okay, back when Michelle Obama was doing the whole, we're not going to make kids fat anymore in schools, so she just, like, ruined all of the lunches and replaced all of the vending machines with, like diet soda and stuff. I started drinking diet soda because that's all we had. And since then, it's not as sweet as I try to go back to drinking regular soda now, and it's just way too sweet. So my tastes have adjusted accordingly. So I guess thank Michelle Obama for that, or not. But I've got a Diet Pepsi here, and I think that's good. But if I were to drink a regular Pepsi, my teeth would hurt, and I'd kind of feel sick.
Aspartame maxing.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Taylor says he sent a meme to me here. Let's watch this. 4-year-old me, I made a special drink for you. My dad on his third glass of Fanta ketchup milk smoothie. What's that guy drinking? Like,
It looks like eggs. It looks like he's slonking eggs.
Yeah, it looks like I'm trying to figure out how many. It looks like he's probably got, I don't know, maybe 15.
He's probably got a dozen in there, yeah.
Speaking of, slonking eggs is great. I love slonking eggs.
I have a really weak stomach. Like, shit like this makes me gag.
All right, well, speaking of mystic wizards, the man is back. He is back, and he is in fine form. So first of all, here's the video he's responding to, because he went on to, he's got a whole thread here that had me rolling out of bed laughing last night. So good. But first we got to watch the video to get the context for it. So, Jill Stein. Hey, y'all. This is a little spicy, but I had thoughts about AOC calling me and the Green Party not authentic and predatory.
You're just showing up once every 4 years to do that. You're not serious. You're not to me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory.
Jill here. I'm about to board, but very quickly, I just wanted to thank AOC Pelosi so very much for her very authentic concern about growing green power. Clearly,
AOC Pelosi. It's spicy, Cooper.
is the attack dog du jour, and the Democrats are running scared, and they should be, because who wants to support a genocide? Who wants to vote for a genocide? And if there's anything that's predatory here, it's saying that your candidate is working tirelessly for a ceasefire when actually they are actively funding and arming genocide and actually refusing to even consider an arms embargo, which would bring the genocide to a screeching halt. AOC, who's supposed to be in leadership of the Democratic Party, it's amazing if she doesn't know about the anti-democratic tactics and strategies that the Democratic Party uses to crush and silence political opposition. They've been hiring an army of lawyers to throw competitors like me off the ballot. They've been hiring infiltrators and saboteurs and publicly posting job advertisements for those positions. They've been hijacking our public funding in order to keep us off the ballot, and they actually impersonated the Greens to throw us off the ballot in 22 in the Senate race for North Carolina, for example. How is that not fraud and election interference? Also, what's predatory here is stealing the signature issue of the Greens. Our Green New Deal, launched in 2010, appropriated by AOC as her signature issue in 2018 without a mention of where it came from. So bottom line is, Americans want more choices. We are that choice. We are the one choice, which is anti-war, anti-genocide, pro-worker, climate emergency. Check us out, JillStein2024.com. Thanks so much.
I wonder if we're gonna get a Jill Stein MAGA moment. Is she gonna sidle her way up to RFK? I have not kept track of Jill Stein's activities lately. I regret to inform you.
I forgot that she existed. Until
right, so did
I.
Yeah. She's got quite a grift going. She's managed to turn this into an entire
I don't know
career.
how long. Yeah. And there's still people who believe, oh, the Greens, yeah, we're growing.
Yeah, this is the year.
They've got this legislation to keep us off the ballot. No, they're trying to keep like Trump off the ballot, not you. They don't care about you.
I like how she says like the Green New Deal is our thing. Like that's our thing that you took from us. You took it from us. This is like the libertarians that I don't know, if someone talked about Second Amendment rights or something like that. They'd be like, "You see, libertarians, we're affecting people. We're making things happen, man." Someone said, "I wonder if she was a wood back in the day." Jihad Jason. I was curious myself. So, I don't know if this is actually her, the Stein family saga, 40 years of the seafood restaurant. I don't know if this is related to her, but very, very Longhausian, very NPR.
Yeah.
Not my thing.
Nah.
However,
I mean, gun to my head.
Yeah, man can't be too choosy, you know.
Yeah, I mean, could be worse.
Yeah. So here's Thomas 777's response. AOC is legit like barely sentient. Shit is like arguing with your cat. Also, unless you're practicing medicine, you're not doctor. Shit is cringe as fuck. Don't call yourself doctor because you have a degree from Che Guevara City College in typing. It's the equivalent of mail ordering one of them certificates claiming you're a karate expert and hanging it above your rent-to-own furniture that you keep the plastic on because that's what classy people do, according to hood illogic. And don't type y'all. What are you, a drill rapper? Fact I'm giving this kind of advice away is no small thing. You should be smacking me in the dome with a pillowcase of C notes. You're welcome. If it was just this, I would have been like, all right, he's back and he's firing off heaters. But he kept going.
You're just showing up once every 4 years to do.
Shut up, AOC. You're also not a presidential candidate. I could register an LLP and title it Thomas 777 for Police Chief of the Known Universe. That doesn't actually make me candidate for Police Chief of the Known Universe. Finally, the Green Party is dumb. It's dumb in Europe, but it's way dumber here. It sounds like a party about smoking weed. Should be the Brown Party, like dog poo. How would arguing with AOC even work? It's on a level of trying to debate Nikki Trick Baby Faley. These people are lizards. There's no mind there in the human sense, just some weird brainstem instinct and an oddly placed capacity to speak. Mrs. Harris will at least laugh for no reason or drop some pre-programmed phrase while grinning from a benzo high. Like, I'm talking now, okay? Like if Mrs. Harris got captured by ISIS and was facing the firing squad or some bonkers Saracen with a machete, she'd grin and be like, no, we're not going to do that right now, okay? AOC will just like flick her tongue at passing bugs or something. Someone said that's an insult to frogs. They have way more intelligence than AOC or just a will in general. He says, I like frogs. I like all animals, but frogs and kitties lack a rational soul. So it's absurd to argue with them, just like it's absurd to argue with wide-eyed lizard ladies who talk like Speedy Gonzalez to Honor Day culture. Would be like if I lobotomized myself and started running around talking like Foghorn Leghorn at all times.
The mention of the karate master certificate made me think of Rex Kwon Do from Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah. Oh man, he had something else, but I don't remember where it was, and I don't want to sit here just digging around trying to find. There was something he added onto the thread later on, but oh man, it's good to have him back. Go follow him at real_7 HOMAS 777. If you're not following Thomas, man, like look at this. Hold on. Look at the man's absolute vibe here. He has a style all to his own. He just tweeted out some pictures the other day. Come on. You tweet too much, Thomas. Here you go. Look at this. Just look at that.
He does not care what anybody thinks of him.
Yes, I wish I could walk around dressed like this. Just throwing some shit together and pulling it off. Mystic wizard, indeed. Is there another one? Thomas, you got to come to San Antonio, man. I want to be out just meandering around the city and stumble across this guy. Incredible. The rings. Shout out to Thomas, man. He's doing the Lord's work. All right. This one was sent by a friend.
He wore skin-tight leopard spot pants into a Buc-ee's.
That's right, he did. He is a cultural statement unto himself.
We're
our strongest soldier.
Children.
With the fingerless gloves, iron crosses, and battle flags. Yeah, 80s Motley Crue, very much, yeah. So this one here was sent over by a friend. Apparently, whoever's behind America First Legal is at least a friend of a friend. They said, based on reporting from Mike Benz, we just launched investigations into the Biden-Harris State Department to determine whether the U.S. Embassy in Paris had advanced knowledge of or may have played a role in coordinating the arrest of Telegram CEO Pavel Durov. Man, I don't know if I can read all this. Yeah, I don't need to. I'm going to throw the link in there so you can read the details yourself if you want to. But they say on August 28, 2024, French authorities charged Mr. Durov with a host of crimes following his detainment at Paris-Le Bourget Airport on August 24, 2024. Mr. Durov's Telegram Messenger is one of the world's most successful and largest messaging platforms. Telegram promises its users that it will protect free speech and prevent government-sponsored censorship. He'll have to post bail of 5 million euros and, if convicted, face decades in prison. Based on reporting from former Department of State official and founder of the Foundation for Freedom Online, Mike Benz, there is reason to believe that the Biden-Harris administration may have had advanced knowledge of or even played a role in Mr. Durov's arrest.
He's still a young man. He's got a lot. What do you think happens to this? I mean, he's still a young man. He's got a lot of money, and this is, and more importantly, what this says to the rest of the world. I mean, there must be, I would hope, some amount of regret from the French for doing this, because it's terrifying a lot of people in the West.
Well, unfortunately, the main actors that could bring pressure on the French government to let Pavel go are probably the ones who coerced or pressured or at least coordinated with the French doing it in the first place.
Wow.
There is no chance on earth that that French law enforcement made such a geopolitically and geostrategically sensitive move without coordinating, notifying, or working with the U.S. Embassy in Paris. As we speak, the House Foreign Affairs Committee could immediately seek all communications, emails, documents, meeting minutes of everyone from the U.S. Embassy who had any communication with French law enforcement, French intelligence, or French government officials up to and in the moments leading up to that arrest when he stepped off that plane. They said Macron said today they had an in-process judicial investigation. But the fact is the State Department, it runs the censorship industry here and around the world. And they have had this long-range plan to get the EU Digital Services Act in motion. I was at the State Department when we were negotiating that. The fire is coming from inside our house.
So again, as I said in a couple episodes ago, I am well aware of Mike Benz's background, fully aware that he talks about a lot of things, and it's also significant what he doesn't talk about. But as long as he's doing this, he is an asset. Drown them in lawfare. It's great to see intelligent, America First activism like this.
What do you think?
This is a great way of using a guy like this to seed the narrative, having it amplified by people like Tucker and Elon, creating the basis for this type of lawsuit, which then forces them into a position of either having to proceed with the lawsuit and go through discovery and all that, or they have to try to defend themselves. Put them under attack from all angles. This is great. So again, I'll put this link in the thread, the master thread afterwards, so you can go read the details of it if you'd like to. His background is he's look up Frame Game. That'll take you down the rabbit hole. If you look up Mike Benz Frame Game, that'll give you some stuff. I think it's definitely. There's certainly questions to be asked, but for the time being, with what he's working on, I am more than happy to amplify it, and I'm happy to see our fearless leaders amplifying it as well. Speaking of the fearless leaders,
me.
Yes, King of the Zoomers. New York Post. Today's cover, migrants flooding NYC's justice system, making up 75% of arrests in Midtown as pathetic sanctuary city laws handcuff cops. 3 out of 4 arrested in Midtown, a migrant. Crime and again. And Elon says, when is enough enough? Enough was enough. My mother lives in New York, and her friends have been assaulted 3 times this year with no punishment for the attackers. So now, what we're seeing is they went after his kid. They're going after his mother. This shit is personal. This is part of why I think, as Charles Haywood has indicated, Elon is inevitably going to be called as a man of destiny. He's being called as a man of destiny. And whether or not he and his compatriots are exactly our guys at this moment is irrelevant, because they're going to be forced to become our guys. It's personal for them. This isn't which makes it more, if this was like an ideological, I don't know, axe that they had to grind, then I would be less optimistic or not optimistic, but like sure of the direction that it's going to go, because ideology is a very weak ground to battle from. Defending your family or avenging what's been done to them, that's far more sustainable. That's what's motivating the spirit behind these guys. You have any thoughts to add there?
Nope.
All right. Next story. Just touching in on this one, Robbie Starbucks still hard at work.
I don't like his name.
Because it's not Starbucks?
I don't know what it is. Just I see his face, his goofy face, and Robbie Starbuck, and it just kind of makes me mad. I don't have anything personally against the guy. I don't know anything about him, but I just face value. I don't like him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's. I am mostly indifferent to him, except for the fact that the work that he's doing is very, very good. Getting these Fortune 500 companies to bend the knee. Now he's to the point where, so he's the one who's been doing. I think he started off with, was John Deere the first one he went after? He had like insiders within the company, and he did a big expose of how much they're like, Tractor Supply. It was Tractor Supply and John Deere. I can't remember which one was first. And then Harley Davidson was another one. Some of these like traditional American companies that ostensibly pander directly to the heartland Americans, but they've been infiltrated by DEI and ESG being levered in through HR departments because of their executives being not at all beholden to the actual constituents of the company. So he's gone after them and done these big exposés on all the social the HRC's woke corporate equality index, social credit system, DEI based training programs, donations to like pride events and drag queen story hour stuff. And he started with John Deere and Tractor Supply and forced them to bend the knee and commit that they were going to get rid of all of this stuff. They were no longer going to participate in all these things. Now he's getting he has had multiple companies now that have gotten wind that he's coming after them next, and they've preemptively announced that they're changing all of their policies and abandoning all the DEI ESG stuff. So the most recent one here is Coors Light and Molson. Last week I messaged executives to let them know that I plan to expose their woke policies. Today they're preemptively making changes. So here's his video on it.
Of Molson Coors. You probably know that. All right, y'all, I got fantastic news for you. Another win. Last week, we reached out to the CEO and president of Molson Coors. You probably know them for their Coors beers. I was concerned about their woke and DEI-based policies, so I laid out my concerns. I was concerned about woke policies at Coors and DEI policies, so I reached out, I laid out our concerns, and I laid out that we were investigating for a story. After a little back and forth with them, I've got some fantastic news for you. Before we begin with the changes, though, I wanted to point out that this page used to exist, and it no longer does. Now that page looks like this. Isn't it beautiful? This email just went out to all Coors employees. So let's jump into the changes. First, there will be no more DEI trainings. Employee resource groups, or ERGs, that were previously separated across identity politics lines like race or what kind of sex you like to have, are now BRGs, business resource groups, that are open to all employees. Coors is no longer donating to divisive events like pride events. Instead, they're going to be donating to their hometown communities and core business goals like alcohol responsibility, disaster relief efforts, and promoting access to higher education and job training for positions in their industry. Employee and executive compensation will no longer be tied to DEI hiring goals. Coors will no longer have supplier diversity goals that give preferential treatment to, quote, diverse suppliers. And I say the best for last. At least my favorite part of these stories is always when the companies leave the HRC CEI scoring system. Yeah, Coors had 100 on the CEI scoring system, which is essentially a social credit system to push leftism into corporate America. I have had enough of the CEI scoring system, so I've got some great news for you. Coors is in fact stating they will no longer participate in the CEI scoring system from the HRC. The corporate equality index is on its way out. I love that this email ends with the Coors leadership team talking about the importance of unity, because unity is going to be found in our approach of neutrality and sanity. No more divisive social and political issues at work. They don't belong there. Work is going to be about work, and we're going to make corporate America sane again. Our movement is about something more than just ending wokeness. It's about ending the idea of a silent majority. There is nothing more shameful than the fact that for the past few decades, we've accepted the idea of being a silent majority. It has allowed a very loud, obnoxious group of people to take over the conversation on every important issue, and by proxy to take over every major cultural institution. Well, we're done letting that happen. We are speaking up now. I am your megaphone, but you're losing that fear of speaking up yourself, and you can do it in your community and speak up for your values, because sanity is making a comeback. If you support our mission to end wokeness in corporate America, then you can sign up to subscribe for $5 a month on my X page. That helps us with the growth of our team so we can add more people, so we can research more companies and expose them, which means bringing more change like this. You want to be sure you're not giving your money to woke companies who hate your values? Go to Public Square, download their app on any major app store. Public Square's been supporting our project from day one to expose woke companies and to bring sanity back to corporate America, so I can't thank them enough. Go get their app and find companies who are not woke to give your money to.
So he's very much from the, I don't know, like Chris Rufo, James O'Keefe sort of venue. And I think with these types of guys, so the instinct with a lot of people is they want to go, okay, well, what is this? Let's go find anything this guy has ever said on any other of these hot button issues and find out what their, where do they stand? Where do they stand on these most important issues? And I can tell you exactly where they stand. They're normie conservatives, but we don't need them to be exactly to check off every single box. The type of thing they're doing right now is brilliant. It's wonderful. This is part of this full court press on the blob, on this regime machine that has its own full court press that has spread its tentacles into every last little bit of our lives. If you could start hacking off those tentacles, I don't give a shit what your background is. I don't care what you believe about this thing or that thing or the other thing. I care about the actual things that you're doing right now. And the things that Robbie Starbuck is doing right now are very, very good. If you want super based, trad, right-wing, sufficiently racist and sexist people doing this stuff, then you go do it. He's explicitly calling for more people to do this. He's got a whole little team of people now. This is shout out to the boomers. This is fantastic boomer bait. This is exactly the sort of thing that the how can I describe this? I have the picture of this Twitter profile in my mind that's going to have all the different emojis, and it's going to be in all caps talking about a red wave, and we're going to take back our country. I love Trump, MAGA. I follow back true patriots. Those are the people who are in the trenches out here doing this stuff. They're the ones who are calling and harassing these companies, inundating their phone lines, barraging them with emails, forcing them to bend the knee. Excellent. I love it. Andrew says unity is a great oppositional term to DEI. Yeah, it is. It's great because it's like it's a word that you kind of can't argue with without automatically putting yourself in a bad spot rhetorically. No, not unity. If you start saying, well, their unity means yada, yada, yada. Oh, are you opposed to unity? Why are you opposed to unity? Well, you can't have unity around the bad things. Oh, so you're divisive. You're oppositional. You're identifying yourself as the outer party now. It's very good rhetorically. Javier Oliva says the Tennessee State Republican Party removed Robbie Starbuck from the 2022 primary ballot because he was actually right-wing. What else do you need to know about Mr. Starbuck? Interesting. I actually didn't know that. Maybe he's a little less normie than I initially thought. He's also just really effective at this sort of thing. He's been this way for a long time. Another guy like this is Scott Pressler. Scott Pressler has been actually working on a very effective ground game in the swing states. And he's another guy. Like, he's this goofy-looking gay guy. So all the guys who believe all the right things on the internet, they're like, oh, he can't be a friend, he can't be an asset because he's gay. I don't give a shit if he's gay. The work he's doing is very, very good. Yes, he should stop being gay. He should stop identifying that way. You know, the only way that I know he's gay is because other people have told me he's gay. I don't see him out
Have you heard him
platforming it.
talk?
Scott Pressler?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like
it's pretty clear.
Yeah, sure. But like I wouldn't know he was gay. I would be like, yeah, he's gay. But the only way that I know he's gay is because other people told me he is. He's not from what I've seen, at least. I'm not like following Scott Pressler around the internet, but I'm not seeing him out here championing the cause of being gay. He's like, my whole thing is ground game, cleaning up communities, knocking doors, registering people to vote. If you want to be that, great, fine. He's not out here doing drag queen story hour stuff. So he's cool by me. Speaking of gay, no, actually that's not true. Hold on, got to find the right tab here. Ian Carroll. So Ian Carroll went on Danny Jones, the Concrete podcast, which is another one of these great podcasts they've got really interesting guests. He gets into some stuff that he has some guests on that I absolutely am not going to expose myself to. Just all you have to do is look at the thumbnail and the title, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need that in my life. But he also has, Randall Carlson and Ben Von Kerkwick and some other really interesting people too. And he had Ian Carroll on, and I've listened to about half of it so far. They're talking about conspiracies. They're talking about Las Vegas, J13, and then he talks a little bit about Blackrock here. And this is a good clip because this gets right at how organizations, companies like BlackRock are able to do what they do.
How much involvement do you think BlackRock really has globally with like CIA and intelligence? I mean, are they? Some people would argue that BlackRock's too big to be involved in this. They're not maneuverable enough. They're not smaller. They're not like an Apollo Global, for example.
Yeah, you know your shit. And I don't have the answer to this, but I think I've done more research than a lot of the people that are talking about BlackRock conspiracy theories, because BlackRock is like the low-hanging fruit of conspiracy theories, and that's why I blew up on TikTok in the first place. Because I was talking about this sort of basic shit before I really knew anything. And the more I learned about BlackRock, I realized that like, that does not really fly. Like, if BlackRock is actually pulling strings behind the scenes, they're the best that's ever done it. They're the most secretive. They leave zero tracks. They like, if they're doing that, like, Larry, good job. But I don't think they are. But they do play a really, really foundationally important role that I think most people just aren't necessarily equipped to understand. In that, yeah, overthrowing governments and doing covert actions and like all spy shit is very important to, you know, run the world if that's, you know, your goal or whatever. But you still have to have a handle on money and on how commerce works and how finance works and just the global, like, because that's this sort of like beast of its own, right? Capitalism just kind of does its own thing on a global scale. And when you have all these trillions of dollars floating around, you might have the best plans in the world. But if capitalism is incentivized to promote this, like, I don't know, green energy agenda, just making shit up, then you are going to have to go with that tidal flow or subvert it. And BlackRock is, I mean, it's not just BlackRock. It's BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, which is basically just owned by BlackRock more or less. They manage all of our sort of latent money that the regular people would hold that power. And most people then get stuck on the money side of it. And they think, well, yeah, but and so they think, oh, BlackRock controls all this money. They control the world. But easily debunked, because they don't. They manage that money for us. It's our money. They don't own the shares technically. Like, technically they're holding all these shares on our behalf. That's a fair debunk. But it leaves out the piece that it's not about the money, because capitalism is inherently democratic in the sense that every share represents a vote of a company, right? And so all these corporations, like Procter & Gamble, that's like putting poison in our lotion, like Unilever that's putting poison in our food, like Johnson & Johnson that's putting literal asbestos in the baby powder and covering it up for 30 years, like every big corporation in the world, well, in America, just keep the S&P 500 stock market here. They are all majority owned by BlackRock.
What's that?
That's so crazy. Like, we're just gonna put asbestos in baby powder and then lie about it for 3 decades.
Yeah.
That's so insane.
Vanguard and State Street, to the point where all those shares represent the voting power, and that voting power chooses who's in charge of those companies. And so when all in a real like capitalistic free market, we would all be represented in those companies, because we would collectively, through our retirement accounts, through just our regular holdings, through all of our money, which is trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, that would be us sort of collectively having voting power to decide who runs these companies. And so when Johnson & Johnson gets caught with asbestos in the baby powder and covering it up for 30 years, we would have something to say about it. But it's written into all the contracts of all of the ETFs, exchange traded funds, mutual funds, index funds, all these things that BlackRock and Vanguard manage, that they manage the voting rights for the shares. And some people, if you like actively submit forms, you can request to represent your own voting rights, but no one does. And so it's this weird scheme where what they have now done, and I don't know if it's on purpose and nefarious, but regardless, it's extremely useful if it's leveraged, is they have cut off our legs in terms of our representation in the entire stock market that would make all of those corporate executives beholden to us, because they have a fiduciary duty. It's legally binding that all of the boards of directors of all these companies, and thus their executives, the CEOs and stuff, they have a fiduciary duty to serve the shareholders in the shareholders' best interest. And in a theoretical world, that would be us. And so it is illegal for them to do, even if it makes more money for the shareholders, if they're poisoning us and we don't want them to do it, and we're all telling them we don't want them to do it, there's another layer of like, you're legally bound to do what's best for us. But now their fiduciary duty is to BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, technically, because those guys are the actual shareholders. We are just the beneficial owners of an ETF share. And so that means that now all of that fiduciary duty is consolidated into one central spot. And every one of those guys know that they don't lose their job if we get mad. They lose their job if BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street get mad. And so suddenly they are all their interests are aligned to just please a few fund managers. And if you tank a company and absolutely obliterate its value, you sell it for parts, you extract all that wealth, give your buddies a bunch of paychecks, and destroy this, whatever company it is, like Toys R Us, who knows, you don't necessarily get punished for that, because that's what this sort of collective body, this money mind, wanted to happen for any reason. You get rewarded with a bonus, with a new job, because if the guys representing all these shares that work at BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, et cetera, and the banks along with it,
I knew that Andrew was going to like this one. As soon as I put this in the hopper to talk about today, I was like, yeah, I hope Andrew's watching, because he's going to dig this. What he said up here, this is the next stage of the war on DEI. Got to get the boomers, Bomer pile. Got to get the boomers voting in corporate elections with their mountains of money. He said, until now, my show with Pete has been the only one pointing this out.
If they're pleased with what you did, doesn't matter if it was in the company's best interest, because it was in the shareholders' best interest. So you suddenly, though you sunk that company through apparent mismanagement, you wind up being the CEO of this next big company, and you get all these bonuses, right? And so it inherently cuts the legs off of capitalism in a way that makes the free market not represented in the way that it's run anymore. And that's, I think, fundamental to why we wind up with all these psychopaths that are running all these companies and are completely okay with doing things like putting poison in the food and not really caring if it poisons us, because it makes a lot of money for everyone that's in the club. It sort of creates the club, this corporate club, and it incentivizes them all to do what's best for the club, not for the consumer. And we don't really have any recourse other than getting loud on Twitter now, because our shares are all locked away into these funds. So it's not that they control the world, but they do control this really important capitalistic piece of the world that you would have to have some level of a lid on. if you wanted to achieve big things. And it might not be nefarious. It might just be that like they all benefit from it. So it's just evolved to be that way. I don't know. But it's an interesting one because there's like layers to, oh, it's the biggest conspiracy in the world? Not really. Like, oh, but there's actually a layer where it's really nefarious and evil in ways that directly affect all of us.
Yes.
In a way that like the CIA overthrowing Guatemala doesn't necessarily affect you except for the price of bananas. And I think that's why I blew up on TikTok, is because I started to unpack that and show how like, because this dude is in charge of this company that makes all your shampoo, it's full of chemicals that are going to make your hair fall out. And if you buy from a family-owned business that's run by someone who, like, a woman who cares about your hair, that hair product is not full of chemicals that make your hair fall out. You should buy from her and support a real person. And like F. Procter and Gamble, who's like being sued for literal hair loss in their shampoo products, and then right next door there's a product from Procter and Gamble to fix hair loss. And so those are things that affect us in real life that we can actually do something about by just changing our buying habits and starting to support small businesses and family-owned businesses. And that's like a whole other side of my content that a lot of people don't see that I love, because it's kind of more grounded. It's a little less like fun because it tends to be a lot of researching of just companies, researching who owns things, but it's super useful.
Shout out to Ian Carroll. I've been really enjoying following him lately. One thing I want to earlier in this conversation, they were talking about the Las Vegas thing, and I think I played. Did I play the video on here of him talking about the Las Vegas incident map, where it had all the different the little body cam and all the weird things about helicopters flying over and turning the transponders off and back on again? It's very interesting. I have a friend who was received wounds, we'll say, in that event, and she barely survived. And she said just before, about an hour before the whole thing happened, she was at the concert, and about an hour before the whole thing happened, they were just kind of standing there hanging out and drinking and whatever, and some crazy lady came walking by, wild-eyed, all disheveled looking, and started waving her finger at him and pointing at him and saying, "You're all gonna die. It's happening. It's coming. You're all gonna die." And they were like, "What? Crazy lady?" Then an hour later, all of this stuff started kicking off, and the wounds that she received could only have come from, she experienced it this way, and then in retrospect, mapping everything out, they could only have come from the opposite direction of the ostensible source. I think I'm speaking vaguely but specifically enough for you to understand here. Because this is one of those. This is one of those, like, if you get too carried away talking about this in public, you'll see some black helicopter stuff happen. That whole thing. This is one of the weirdest things that has ever happened in American history, and it goes deep. If you want to hear a really good overview, one of the best public quick overviews of it I've ever heard, go listen to this episode with Ian Carroll is his name. He's on Twitter at Cancel Cloco, Cancel Clothing Company, Cancel Cloco. And the first, I've listened to about half the conversation with Danny Jones here, and so far it's very, very good. All right. Let's go on to the Churchill thread. So this is a long thread, but I think it's very, very worthwhile. And in honor of Martyr Made putting himself out here for all of this, we're going to read through it. So he says, time for a Churchill thread? Time for a Churchill thread. Let's do this. Why I think Churchill was a chief villain of World War II. I know that sounds like hyperbole. Churchill didn't order the most deaths, oversee the most atrocities, or commit the worst crimes. But most of those crimes could not have been committed if the war had not happened, and Churchill was the leader most intent on making it happen. You'll think, but Daryl, everyone knows the war started after Germany invaded Poland, plus Austria and Czechoslovakia before that. It could have been prevented if only people had listened to Churchill and taken a tougher line against Hitler. And you might be right, sort of. Let's rewind the clock to World War I. Churchill is boss of the British Navy, and in 1915 he implements a hunger blockade of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Over the course of the war, up to 750,000 Germans would die of starvation and hunger-related causes. Of course, he's getting fact-checked here by Community Notes. And the source? Wikipedia. Oh, man, okay. Well, now we know it's wrong.
Isn't it crazy how, like, I remember being in school, and, you'd have to write an essay for whatever class, and they'd say, you can't use Wikipedia as a source. It's unreliable. And now it's just the go-to source.
Right. Yeah, and we did an episode a few weeks ago.
The fact that it's unreliable is a feature.
Right. The go back. I'm trying to remember what the basis. I think I might have had Wikipedia in the title. It was from the Pirate Wires article talking about all the NGO interaction behind the scenes at Wikipedia and the crossover with the State Department and everything. Wikipedia is absolutely a State Department op. The blockade, wrote Churchill, treated the whole of Germany as if it were a beleaguered fortress and avowedly sought to starve the whole population, men, women, and children, old and young, wounded and sound, into submission. This is Churchill saying this. That's awful, you'll say, but war is hell. But for 2.5 centuries, Europeans had refrained from tactics like mass starvation and other means of targeting civilian populations when they fought each other. It was a high point of civilization in that regard. Germany agreed to an armistice in 1918, expecting to meet at the table of peace to discuss terms. Instead, Britain maintained the blockade even after the Kaiser had abdicated and a republic was declared, and starved Germans for 8 more months. Some 100,000 more were killed. Who was being killed? Ask Churchill. Remember, this is after the war is over. Quoting from Churchill, "We are enforcing the blockade with rigor, regretting that this weapon of starvation falls mainly on the women and children, upon the old and weak and poor after all the fighting has stopped." End quote. When it was clear that the British were willing to starve all Germany to death, the new government signed a treaty that placed responsibility for the war not on the Kaiser's autocracy, but on the whole German people. The terms would keep Germany in destitution for another decade. A young Adolf Hitler's fantasies about Lebensraum were born of watching his people starve in the streets. Her enemies could plunder overseas colonies for resources, but Germany found them closer to home, or else every war would end with millions of Germans starving to death. It's 1920 and Britain is busy pacifying Iraqi tribes. Churchill insists the RAF must, quote, proceed with work on gas bombs, especially mustard gas, which would inflict punishment on recalcitrant natives. I am strongly in favor of using poisoned gas against uncivilized tribes, end quote. In 1929, Churchill wrote that although the fighting had temporarily ceased, quote, death stands at attention, obedient, expectant, ready to serve, ready to shear away peoples en masse, ready to pulverize without hope of repair what is left of civilization, end quote. As late as 1937, Churchill's opinion of Hitler was not hostile, quote, those who have met Hitler face-to-face have found a highly competent, cool, well-informed functionary with an agreeable manner, a disarming smile, and few have been unaffected by a subtle personal magnetism. On the other hand, he said Trotsky had, quote, the organizing ability of a Carnot, the cold, detached intelligence of a Machiavelli, the mob oratory of a Cleone, the ferocity of Jack the Ripper, the toughness of a Titus Oates. And finally, he is still a Jew. Nothing could get over that, end quote. Like Hitler, Churchill blamed Jews for communism in revolutions dating back to 1789, describing the Bolsheviks as a band of underworld Jews, quote, gripping the Russian people by the hair of their heads and have become practically the undisputed masters of that enormous empire, end quote. During the 1924 election, Churchill circulated a forged letter purporting to be from Soviet leader Zinoviev, plotting revolution in the streets of London. Like Boomer Khan's pointedly saying Barack Hussein Obama, Churchill cited, quote, the letter of Zinoviev alias Apfelbaum. Churchill's public attitude toward Hitler and Germany was openly hostile after 1938. Some have pointed out that he faced bankruptcy and loss of his family estate when he was bailed out, with a gift, not a loan, by a wealthy Zionist. If there's any direct evidence that Churchill was bought, though, I am not aware of it, and there are many simpler explanations for his change of heart, given that the war faction of which he was seeking leadership became more prominent and belligerent after Hitler's annexations of Austria and the Sudetenland. Also, Churchill had been a booster of Zionism for at least 20 years, so there is no need to point to under-the-table payments as the source of his opinions. Finally, while there were many wealthy Zionists, both Jews and converts of the Disraeli type, in the war faction would have gotten along fine without them. In other words, from what I know at least, subject to change, of course, since I've not gone deeply into this aspect of the story as some others have, Churchill's dependency on Zionist or Jewish interests is based on a lot of speculation and extrapolating a few known facts into a grand narrative. This is the longest post in the thread because I was unclear about it in the Tucker interview. When war was declared on Germany, Britain was somber. Chamberlain said, quote, it is a sad day for all of us, but for none is it sadder than me, end quote. Scherer wrote from Berlin of a similar German reaction. But Churchill was ebullient, writing that the prospect of war, quote, thrilled his being. Count Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law and Italy's ambassador to Germany, tried as early as 10 September 1939 to de-escalate. But Churchill, now in the war cabinet, mocked him, saying he should put aside any hope of mediation and display, quote, a more robust mood, end quote. In an October 6th speech, Hitler said that he did not want war, quote, I have had only in mind the great goal of attaining sincere friendship with the British people, end quote. Like Ciano's overture, Hitler's call for peace was met with contempt in the West. He said it would be his last. It wasn't. Former British Prime Minister David Lloyd George warned the House of Commons, quote, "Let us take heed of what we are doing because we are entering on something which involves the whole life of this empire and the whole future of our people," end quote. Hitler tried again, going on the radio to broadcast a call for peace directly to the British people. He would give back the parts of Poland that were not majority German and would work with other powers to reach an acceptable solution to the Jewish problem. He was ignored. In 1940, Nahum Goldman of the World Jewish Congress said that, quote, "If the war in Europe goes on for another year, 1 million of the 2 million Jews in Poland will be dead of starvation or killed by Nazi persecutors," end quote. This gets close to the heart of my Churchill criticism. My contention is not that the Third Reich was peaceful or that Germany did not kill Jews. Germany dishonored itself by its conduct on the Eastern Front. My contention is that the war was not inevitable, that in fact almost no one but Churchill's faction wanted it, and that the atrocities could not have happened in the absence of a world war. This, I think, is not only supportable, but as close to provable as historical counterfactuals can get. Let's continue. Hitler faced calls to commence strikes in retaliation for the hunger blockade, but resisted. In January, Churchill publicly wondered why England had not yet been attacked from the air. Quote, "Is it that they are saving up some orgy of frightfulness which will soon come upon us?" End quote. March 1940. During an attack on docked British warships, a German bomb killed a British civilian. The feeling among British leaders was that it had not been deliberate, but 50 warplanes were sent to retaliate. Some went astray and landed in Denmark. Churchill, now Lord of the Admiralty, called for and commenced the mining of Norway's harbors, an illegal act of war against a neutral country to prevent critical exports to Germany. Prior to March 1940, Germany had no plan to invade Norway, but now ones were drawn up. As Norway lodged legal complaints against Britain, Germany took more forceful action and seized Norway with minimal resistance. Churchill and British leadership was stunned. British forces attempted to invade Norway, but were easily repulsed by the Germans. On April 12, British bombs fell on a German rail line far from any war zone, drawing a German protest. A week later, the British bombed Oslo, the capital of occupied Norway. Again, British planes attacked an undefended town in Germany and was warned that, although the Luftwaffe was under orders not to attack civilians, quote, "Bomb will be repaid with bomb if the British continue bombing non-military targets," end quote. It was Churchill's actions that had led to the seizure of Norway, and he became obsessed with retaking. General Ironside complained that Churchill wanted to divert troops from every other place, but that, quote, "He is so like a child in many ways. He tires of a thing and then wants to hear no more of it," end quote. The following month, Chamberlain tendered his resignation and Winston Churchill was elevated to prime minister. Germans who still hoped to make peace, Hitler among them, were dismayed that the chief proponent of escalation had been put in charge of the British government. On Churchill's second night in office, a larger air raid was launched against Germany. 4 civilians were killed, one an English woman. British air power theorist James Spate wrote that England, quote, "had only been fooling with air war until then. We began to bomb the German mainland before the Germans began to bomb objectives on the British mainland," end quote. The next night, more British bombers flew over Germany, flying in the dark and dropping bombs at random targets. When Germany complained and warned that this would lead to escalation, Churchill's government simply denied the raids had occurred. In May 1940, Churchill ordered all German nationals to be rounded up. Thousands, including countless Jewish refugees from those countries, were marched at bayonet point to concentration camps for the duration of the war. On May 15, Churchill told his cabinet that now was, quote, "the psychological moment to strike Germany in her own country," end quote. He ordered strikes on civilian areas in German cities, though he worried it might create, quote, "a revulsion of feeling," end quote, in the U.S., whom he was hoping to pull into the war. That night, British bombers destroyed a girls' boarding school in Marienburg. The German high command complained amongst themselves that the British were flying blind at night, killing civilians without targeting any defended military targets. The Germans have, to this point, still not responded with attacks against British cities. Days later, German tanks were streaking across France, and the Brits were evacuating at Dunkirk. And here I'll quote at length from Nicholson Baker's book, Human Smoke, speaking of this moment of German triumph. Blumentritt, a German military aide, wrote that Hitler said he thought the war would be done in 6 weeks. Quote, "After that, he wished to conclude a reasonable peace with France, and then the way would be free for an agreement with Britain," end quote. Then, according to Blumentritt, Hitler launched into an admiring monologue of the greatness of the British Empire. Quote, "All he wanted from Britain," wrote Blumentritt, "was that she should acknowledge Germany's position on the continent," end quote. Hitler's aim was to, quote, "make peace with Britain on a basis that she would regard as compatible with her honor to accept," end quote. On May 24, Hitler issued a general approval for the Luftwaffe to retaliate with attacks against England itself, but still did not authorize specific missions to be carried out. With the surrender of France, the war seemed soon to be at an end. No army opposed Germany in Europe. The British were the only remaining belligerent, and they had no means whatsoever of reinvading the continent. That week, both Lord Halifax and Neville Chamberlain suggested that it was time to entertain one of Germany's many peace offers. Churchill ruled that there would be no negotiation. Halifax lost his temper, saying there was no way forward, and threatened to resign. Churchill expanded the detention order for German nationals to include people above 60 years of age. Informed that the detainees were mostly Jewish refugees, he told the House of Commons that he was, quote, very sorry for them, but we cannot at the present time and under the present stress draw all the distinctions which we should like to do, end quote. With no way of reaching Europe but by air, British bombers hit targets all over. They bombed neutral Switzerland. They hit Genoa and Milan. They struck Dusseldorf and Münster. The SS reported, quote, strong hatred against England becomes heavily concentrated and calls time and again for revenge, end quote. Now, Churchill ordered an attack on the French Navy, fearing it would come under German control. French Admiral Gensoul sent desperate messages, quote, for God's sake, stop firing, you're murdering us. More than 1,000 French sailors were killed. On July 4, 1940, the SS reported that indiscriminate British bombing had caused, quote, a general rage against England and the wish for a real retaliation by way of bombardment of English cities, end quote. But Hitler still hesitated, increasing pressure to give the order even as more bombs fell on Hamburg that night. This next bit says a lot about Churchill's intentions. He wrote to a minister of his concern that Germany might turn his attention away from England, turning east or south. In that case, support for the war might wane, and this was to be avoided at any cost. But, he wrote, there is no thing that will bring him back and bring him down, and that is an absolutely devastating, exterminating attack by heavy bombers from this country upon the Nazi homeland. Sorry, I kind of butchered that. Basically, Churchill was afraid that Germany is going to turn his attention away from England and he wouldn't be able to get the war. So the only way to actually ensure that the war happens is, quote, an absolutely devastating, exterminating attack by heavy bombers from this country upon the Nazi homeland. On July 19, 1940, Hitler told the Reichstag, quote, Mr. Churchill has just declared again that he wants the war, he said, but Germany did not, and conscience compelled him to make a final appeal for peace. Quote, I see no reason that should compel us to continue this war. Mussolini's son-in-law and ambassador to Germany, Count Ciano, who had no starry-eyed view of Hitler, reported privately that, quote, I believe his desire for peace is sincere. They are hoping and praying that this appeal will not be rejected, end quote. 1 hour after Hitler's final call for peace was broadcast, the BBC broadcasted in German what England thought of it. Quote, let me tell you what we here in Britain think of this appeal of yours to what you are pleased to call our reason and common sense. Herr Führer and Reichskanzler, we hurl it right back at you, right in your evil-smelling teeth, end quote. Ciano wrote, quote, late in the evening when the first cold English reactions to the speech arrive, a sense of ill-concealed disappointment spreads among the Germans, end quote. The night after Hitler's speech, Britain's ambassador to the U.S. sent a cable to London. He said Hitler's terms deserved consideration and pled that the government, quote, not close the door to peace, end quote. The next night, Churchill gave orders to prepare operations to bomb Berlin itself. In the 3 nights after Hitler's speech, the German press bureau wrote that the British had bombed civilian targets in Wismar, Bremen, Hamburg, Pinneberg, Paderborn, Hagen, Bochum, Schwerin, Wilhelmshaven, and Kassel. German planes dropped copies of Hitler's speech all over England. Churchill had teams of sweepers on hand to ensure as few people saw them as possible. A German paper wrote, quote, the British press is an iron curtain hiding the real opinion and feelings of the British people. Interesting turn of phrase. Josh says, imagine being British and mocking someone's teeth. Muriel Lester, a Christian relief worker, was trying to find ways to feed starving refugees on the continent. Quakers, private relief organizations, and former U.S. President Herbert Hoover warned that the hunger blockade was creating a crisis. Not for German soldiers who would be fed in any case, but for occupied civilians. Britain warned that any attempts to bring food into Europe would be met with force.
What a psychopath, man.
Mm-hmm. On August 11, 1940, Hoover said, quote, the obvious truth is that there will be wholesale starvation, death, and disease in these countries, end quote. He complained that his organization had been feeding 200,000 civilians a day in Poland, but that Churchill ordered it stopped as soon as he took office. Quote, he was a militarist of the extreme school who held that the incidental starvation of women and children was justified by victory, end quote. British planes began firebombing the Black Forest. A New York Times reporter wrote, quote, skirting these blank spots burned from previous raids, they unloaded hundreds of incendiary bombs on green parts of the forest, end quote. British fighters burned wheat fields and strafed livestock, farm equipment, and random people. German military leaders accused the British of dropping sacks of potato bugs on their crops. Finally, on September 6, 1940, the Luftwaffe was ordered to commence the Blitz, and England came under attack. Churchill was outraged, or, given his privately expressed hope for German retaliation to harden British resolve, he at least feigned outrage. He ordered the military to start exploring the use of poison gas in, quote, exterminating attacks against the German civil population, end quote. The besieged German leadership became convinced that the power of international Jewry was the only possible explanation for England's refusal to make peace and her continual drive to escalation. Measures against Jews became harsher, and internally they spoke of Jews as hostages. In a speech, Hitler said, quote, I watched for 8 days. They dropped bombs on the people of the Rhine. They dropped bombs on the people of Westphalia. I watched for another 14 days. I thought that Churchill was crazy. He was waging a war that could only destroy England. I waited over 3 months, but then I gave the order. I will take up the battle, end quote. It was November 1940. I've been at this a while, so I'm going to cut it here for now. This is not a complete history of the escalations of the war, obviously. My intention here is not to defend the actions of the Third Reich or any of its leaders, but only to support a narrow claim that of all the belligerent leaders, Churchill was the one most intent on prolonging and escalating the conflict into a world war of annihilation. Germany and Italy did not want it. In fact, before the conquest of Western Europe, German leaders, including Hitler, were skeptical that they'd be able to take on Britain in a fight. We can be skeptical of Hitler's motives for offering peace again and again, and for holding back against British civilians despite months and months' provocations. But the fact is that Germany was offering peace and by all accounts sincerely wanted it. After the annexation of Poland, Hitler told other party members, quote, the Reich is now complete, end quote. Would Germany have eventually attacked the Soviet Union? Perhaps, but they would not have done so in June of 1941 if England had agreed to end a war which had no hope of victory short of expanding it into a much larger conflict by bringing in the USA, USSR, or both. Like the Turkish massacre of Armenians, the atrocities that took place in the East, for which the German perpetrators are responsible, make no mistake, could not have happened except in the chaos of a world war in which millions were already being killed. Because it's so central to our founding ideology, we speak of World War II as if it was the best possible outcome, or certainly the least bad outcome. But any objective look shows that it was the worst possible outcome, and that it could have been avoided if not for the warmongers, chief among them Winston Churchill. I'll expand on this tomorrow. If you've read this far, and it means you like a good deep dive of exactly the kind I do on the Substack, or you're just a masochist, either way, come see what all the fuss is about. If you aren't subscribed to the Martyr Made Substack, fix that. If for no other reason than just to throw him some cheddar for putting his neck on the line like he has. Because you know that he knew going on Tucker Carlson and talking about this was going to spark exactly the response that it did. And I would say it's not out of the realm of possibility to suggest that he could be in personal danger, given all of this. Given the way that the who was it? Chris RX from the Discord coined the Nurembergs. The Nurembergs have been absolutely losing their minds, going completely crazy because he's challenging the foundational mythology. He's challenging the state religion, and that cannot stand. He is becoming the vector for the cracks in the regime, and they don't tend to leave those sorts of things unpunished. So go support Daryl Cooper, Martyr Made, subscribe to his Substack. Here's another little interesting thing he said this morning. Martyr Made is currently the #1 podcast in the world on iTunes, which means a lot of people expecting to hear a rabid Nazi are going to be very confused by my series on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Have you listened to this one, Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem?
I've listened to maybe the first third of it, not all of it.
I've heard really good stuff about it. I haven't gotten around to doing it because it's so long. It's, I don't know, like 40 hours long or something like that. And I know that once I get into it, then it's going to completely dominate the rest of my time for a long time as I'm trying to work my way through it. So I've held off actually listening to it. But I know that you have strong thoughts and feelings about his Dostoevsky and Nietzsche episode, The Underground Man.
Literally the best. I think it's called The Underground Spirit. It's like episode 20 or something like that. Literally the best podcast episode of any podcast I've ever listened to in my life.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. It had me in tears by the end of it. Just absolutely brilliantly well done. There's lots of things that that Daryl Cooper has said. There's lots of stuff that he posts. He gets on tweet rampages sometimes that I just really, really disagree with. But you can't listen to the sorts of content that he produces and not recognize that there is a very sincere, well thought out, honest heart behind it all. Very gifted man, very sincere.
Have you listened to his episode, The Anti-Humans?
You've told me about it, and that's part of the reason I haven't, because I don't. That's heavy.
Yeah, especially part 3 about the Romanian torture camps and stuff. Actually, physically made me sick to my stomach.
Mm-hmm. Matt Greider says, Kingpilled, I think I remember you mentioning you go to an Orthodox church. I'm looking for a good Orthodox church to try out in Austin, Texas, and I'm not sure what to look for. Any recommendations? The one that I go to is in Lockhart. It's about 30 minutes south. You can just hop on the toll road and run on down there. 85 mile per hour posted speed limit on the toll road.
And I just dropped a link to the Assembly of Bishops website. So that's going to have it, and it has on the website, there's a directory with like a search function for Orthodox churches that are canonical Orthodox churches in your area. That are canonical. So
there's also
hop on
Holy
that.
Mother of God in Georgetown. Father Moses McPherson is.
I think I saw there's a Saint Elias, which is an Antiochian parish. I saw
Saint Elias.
What was it? There was a Serbian one up there somewhere.
Yeah, you should definitely come down to Lockhart sometime. Let me know when you're going to be there, and you might catch both Buck Johnson from Counterflow and me. We're only occasionally there at the same time, but if you're lucky, you might get both of us at the same time. Okay, let me catch up on some of these other comments before we proceed through the rest of the show. We're going to talk about the Foids here next. $1.99 super chat from Matt. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Josh Ham says, I wonder if the Brits used potato bugs because it was an effective tactic already used once before, the Irish potato famine. When I saw potato bugs, it made me think about that. I wonder if that was what was happening.
Churchill is a despicable human being.
Yeah, isn't it? I'm not. I understand the people who are pro Third Reich. Like I understand the perspective. I'm not. I think the World War II was ultimately a battle between fascism, liberalism, and communism, which are all kind of different strains of the same thing. And I think all of them are like, obviously each thing has some aspect in it that is I don't know, born out of truth or desire for goodness or whatever. But the systems as a whole are just degenerate because of what they're grounded in. Of the three, obviously fascism would probably be the most desirable to me. But I think the system itself doesn't matter. I do think that the greatest evils perpetrated throughout the duration of World War II came from the communism and liberalism side of the equation. I think it's absolutely undeniable. FDR and Churchill were. I mean, I think obviously I'm an American, so I'm a little bit biased. I can accept some of the rationalizations for some of the power politics stuff that FDR was doing more than Churchill. I think Churchill was just a degenerate scumbag, absolute bloodthirsty cretin. And it's a great shame. I grew up, of course, thinking Churchill was great. He has all of his pithy one-liners and everything.
Yeah, right. Of course,
he gets lionized, but people have their like alternate histories where they imagine that the Nazis won, and then Hitler has all these hagiographies written about him, and he's lionized as this great hero and everything. And that's exactly what's happened with Churchill.
We're all speaking German.
You're right. Yeah. Willkommen. All right. So, whoops, I closed a tab I shouldn't have. All right. Now, we're going to talk about the women's. It's good that you're here, because I know that you're going to have some thoughts on this stuff.
All right.
We have had a good conversation going in one of the group chats about this lately. No, this is not a woman. We've had a good conversation going in the group chats about men versus women lately, and there may wind up being a panel show in the near future discussing this topic. But this guy here says, "How do sexists attract women?" We're gonna get a banger term out of this video, and this will be a jumping off point for discussing some other stuff. I'll just let it play.
A study of 156 young women had them rate the attractiveness of a sexist profile and rate the attractiveness of a non-sexist profile. And while the sexist profile scored a 3.9 out of 5, the non-sexist profile got a 2.4 out of 5. And this result is consistent with the broader literature, indicating that women, on average, rate a certain type of sexist as more likable and attractive for both short-term and long-term mating. Now, to be clear, I'm talking about a very specific brand of sexism, beliefs like this, which form a construct known as benevolence.
Women should be cherished and protected by men. Men should be willing to sacrifice their own well-being in order to provide financially for the women in their lives. Many women have a quality of purity that few men possess. Every man ought to have a woman he adores.
I'm talking about a very specific brand of sexism, beliefs like this, which form a construct known as benevolent sexism. Hostile sexists, right, men who believe stuff like this, repel women, as you'd expect.
Women are too easily offended. Most women interpret innocent remarks as being sexist. Many women get a kick out of teasing men sexually and then refusing male advances. Many women are actually seeking special favors, such as hiring policies that favor them over men under the guise of asking for equality. Benevolent sexism. BS. I am a benevolent sexist. How about you?
Well, I mean, if these two samples that were given, I guess I'm both. So I agree with every one of those statements.
Right,
and
right.
The previous ones.
Yeah.
But women generally like benevolent sexists, as their beliefs are broadly construed as romantic, and from a practical perspective are very helpful, right? Who doesn't like free dinner? But if you think about it, believing that women must be protected and provided for is pretty infantilizing, and frankly facilitates their dependence on men. First he pays for dinner, then he sorts out the taxes, then he does the budget. Oh, life's so easy, but now he controls all of your finances. Really, if you want someone to become dependent on you, the best thing you can do is not become super controlling, but just do everything for them. And
that is a great observation. If you want people to be dependent on you, do everything for them. And this would apply not just interpersonally, this also applies to power politics, to patronage networks. All the guys who are sitting around complaining that the system won't serve them, that's because you are supposed to be the system. And you become that system by doing everything for everyone. And then they become dependent upon you.
This is part of why some scholars think chivalry, benevolent sexism, or BS, is actually more dangerous than hostile sexism. More dangerous to women, because it's the type of sexism that women buy into in general. Now, this is quite a complicated topic, and that's why I've written a deep dive into it for the Teachers Consent weekly newsletter.
Definitely not reading that.
Yeah, I will not be reading that.
I will, however, read this from Homath. So this is the headline from the New York Post. Unpussified says, chicks dig misogynists. Deadpool killer who murdered two women, quote, for the sake of killing, flooded with messages from lovesick fangirls. Tattooed Deadpool killer Wade Wilson has lovesick ladies begging a judge to save his life, even though he brutally slaughtered two women in 2019 just for the sake of killing. Wilson, 30, has received nearly 4,000 messages in prison, many from misguided women who have sent him X-rated photos. According to public records, authorities had to reject 163 inappropriate photos. I wonder which ones did they not reject? So Homath says, these women don't like murder and they don't want to be murdered. But murdering women for no reason is the purest form of doing whatever you want, no matter how much others hate it. And women do love that. This is why sexual liberation is the end of a civilization. Women will choose chaos and aggression because it's sexier than conflict avoidance and smart, boring choices. You have to be a monster and you have to let women know it, but if you're good and do the right thing, many women will be tempted by the local bad guy. Then we all have to be bad guys or else the bad guys take over. That's why we used to hang them. Now think about how we're treating crime lately.
Yeah.
This reminds me of something that Bukele said recently. He said, we're not, how did he put it? We're not putting like these gangsters and murderers in prison because they're gangsters and murderers. We're putting them in prison so that they can't be gangsters and murderers. Like this isn't punishment. It's literally putting them somewhere where they can't hurt people. This is the reason for capital punishment. It's not to punish someone for doing something bad. It's because you cannot be allowed to live. Because if you're allowed to live, we'll have more people killing people.
Yes, you have forfeited your life.
Correct.
With your decisions.
Okay, this next one is related. Why women love men with dark minds. If you've been through heavy depression, trauma, or struggle and made it out to the other side still alive, then you're the most attractive man to women because her mind is her greatest enemy. It tortures her daily. She's imprisoned by her dark thoughts, and she needs you to show her how to see the light. Women provide men physical nurturing, and men offer women mental nurturing. She relaxes your body. You must relax that hyperactive mind of hers. Women love devilish men because these men share the same darkness of mind as her. He's the only one that can teach her how to cope or live with his darkness. Villain turned hero is what she seeks. The world is too dark for a man without darkness in him to lead or protect her. He will be blind to threats, and he will let her corrupt herself. The modern world is ruled by degeneracy, the worst it's ever been, and women are suffering the most from it behind closed doors, as they're ruled by insecurity and negative thinking, even though women are pretending they're okay. God shows men how to ascend, so a man can show his woman and children how to ascend. So just know all the mental suffering you went through is to become strong enough to lead your future wife and family out of darkness and into the light. You'll rejoice. And then, oh, come on. Seriously? I had something else I wanted to read you and I lost it. Do you have any thoughts on this one? I'm looking for that, Cooper.
Not really any thoughts, just more of an impression. Is like I kind of just get tired of people writing shit like this. I don't know that there's anything in there that I like disagree with per se, but it just feels like you're doing the theory cell thing again.
Mm-hmm.
That whole cell part of the theory cell thing, like
celibate.
Yeah. You're just like, I think this all just maybe it just all feels really obvious to me. All these like everyone's, making observations that just seem obvious to me. Maybe it's just maybe they're not obvious. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe they're not obvious to online spurgs, but the shit is. I just get tired of people writing about this stuff.
There was
go dancing, go talk to some girls.
In this group chat,
it's the broader problem I have with just theory selling in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's just masturbation, and it gets kind of old.
In the group chat, we were discussing the relationship between men and women, and responding to. There's a broader within the red pill, the old red pill culture, which a lot of those guys, a lot of the pickup artist guys, they're like, I don't know, like 3/4 of the way there. But one of the things that I think ultimately subverts them, what ultimately leaves them as effectively just a different strain of lib, is they have a fundamental premise of men and women being the same. Men and women just being like equal opposites of like equal poles that are opposite to each other, but there's like a fundamental baseline thing that unites both of them, and they need to be treated equally. So we have a gynocracy, and we resent women because there's a gynocracy here, and we treat women as if they're like wholly agentic people who have malevolently and selfishly created this gynocracy because they're somehow deficient. They're like deficient or warped or something. And their anthropology is just completely wrong. Men and women aren't equal. God created man, and then he created woman from the side of man. And that relationship remains. Women are grounded in men. Men are grounded in God. Or they ought to be. Women will be grounded in men no matter, like, they don't get a choice in the matter. It's a feature of the way that they exist. One thing I wrote
vice
here,
versa. I mean, it takes both a man and a woman to make you. You can't escape that. Like, your identity is inextricably linked with these relationships.
Yes. And Josiah says, admits that benevolent sexism is what women buy into while condemning it. Slimy meta-benevolence. Judas. Yes, correct.
Yeah, that guy. Ick.
Uh-huh, very much.
Like, maybe women buy into it because that's, like, natural and right.
Yeah, he gave us benevolent sexism, and that's the only reason I played that video, was because benevolent sexism is a great term, a great euphemism. I wrote, I don't want to air out specific people here because we were having a good debate back and forth. But
is this the one I chimed in on?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm usually one to lurk in the group chats, but every now and then I have to weigh in, and this is one such case where I weigh in.
So we were discussing this phenomenon of women lying, and this is one thing you'll see within the pickup artist people, the guys that they'll talk about how women lie as a matter of course. They just lie, and I understand the point of where they're coming from, but what I said is I don't think it's accurate to say women lie as a matter of course, because lying is a specific thing that implies awareness and intent. From a masculine frame, it might be a lie, but they aren't operating from a masculine frame because they are women. If anything, women are more honest because they don't possess the wiring to detach from their own perspective and assess reality impersonally. Men are divergent, women are convergent. This is why boys want to be Batman and girls want Batman to be them. When a woman expresses a sentiment that diverges from reality, that could be perceived by men as lying, she cannot and should not be held to account for her words in the same way a man would. She is, by nature, a passive reflection of the men to whom she is beholden. This is why the girl exists within the domain of her father until she's given to her husband, and then she exists within the domain of her husband. This is how women are naturally wired. It's not something they choose. It's not something they can unchoose. Because even the act of unchoosing is not forming their own reality. It's picking a different man's reality and aligning with that. Women are grounded in men whether they want to be or not. Men are grounded in God or not. To the extent that they are not, their women will also not be. Women do not craft their own identities the way that men do. They are necessarily amalgamated imprints of their communities. Thus, they cannot be held responsible for their identities in the same way men are because they're simply not capable of it. Capable isn't even the right word because it implies some sort of deficiency or shortcoming. They're not even supposed to be responsible for their identities. They're responsible for transmitting identity. If they're transmitting dysfunctional identities, it's because they're being imprinted by dysfunctional communities, which is a product of dysfunctional men. So all the gynocracy haters out there, yes, there is a gynocracy, but that gynocracy is not a construct of women because women don't build these constructs. Men do, and then women operate within them. Which is why it comes back to, if shit's fucked up, men have to fix it.
Yeah.
Not as like a oh, well, you guys, you just got to be responsible for it. No, you are. Men will create new constructs because this is what men do. By default, naturally, by existing. And then women will be pulled into their orbit naturally, but just simply by existing. So yes, there is a gynocracy. There is a longhouse. But that longhouse was not built and created by women to get one over on men because they're not even capable of that. It's not even in their wiring. They're the code debugger. So if women are error messaging, that means that there's a bug in the code of the men. The women will reveal that bug to the men. They're like a mirror. Sometimes they're a black mirror. They reveal to you what's inside you, which is what allows you to then, you get this great symbiotic relationship because a woman reveals to a man what he is. And then, how would you say this? I know Josiah would be able to say this perfectly. A woman reveals to a man what he is, and he makes her into what she can be. He creates the world, the domain for her to then expand and fill completely. But the borders on that domain will always be defined by him. And if he's not defining them for her, then she's going to start acting up because that's what she's supposed to do. That's how she reveals to him that he's not setting the proper boundaries.
I think there's also this kind of issue of, like that there's no perspective from nowhere. Where I think there's a mistake that dudes make where they imagine themselves, they put like their brain, and they imagine themselves in like a female body and then how they would act as a woman from their perspective. And so they assume that the behavior that they're seeing from women is like this Machiavellian sort of plot to get one up on men and just reap all the benefits with none of the... And like, I don't think that's the case. And it's pretty clear that's not the case because everybody's miserable, even women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially women. Even the really successful ones on like a material front who are making millionaires on OnlyFans or porn stars or something, they're all killing themselves left and right.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really sad. This is men did this.
Mm-hmm. Got some good chats here. I got to scroll up because you guys are okay. Here we go.
This is just, and a lot of this, like, this is all just kind of like internet land stuff. Like, there's a huge, I think, bias just on the internet because it's predominantly men and it's spurgy dudes on Twitter who are talking about this kind of shit. Like, the sample size is already fucked from the beginning. But I don't like the only people who have problems like talking to girls and stuff are like dudes online. You don't. And you go to a bar and there's dudes talking to chicks like they've always it's always like as it's always gone. There's people out there just doing normal people things.
Well, I think that's true, but I also think that the men who are online are also in real life. And the problems that they're having that are manifesting online are also things that are present in their lives. Like this whole thing you're saying, the whole like there's no view from nowhere. I think this is part of it's like the tabula rasa sort of default liberal assumption, which is that men and women are equal. And that has put men in a position where they don't, in real life, they don't know how to properly relate to women. And they have this baseline assumption that women are just like men, but different. But
and I'm just saying they're taking that filter and just applying it, I think, inappropriately.
Yeah,
and as a result, getting jaded.
Yeah, right, yeah. Josiah says there's no mercy, no enlightened empathy in allowing people to commit mortal sins, nor is there empathy in allowing innocent people to suffer in their wake, weakness masquerading as virtue. And then Javier Oliva says women are contradiction generators. They want bad boys that take care of them. They want creative guys that are organized. They want providers that have lots of free time to spend with them. Yes. This is how they like the fact that they put men into what men perceive as like wait a second, this is paradoxical. This is difficult. This is impossible. I can't give you the things that you're asking for. Demand is infinite. My supply is finite. Yeah, but you still got to do it. You still have to. This is the thing. This is the refining fire. This is why women are the code debugger for men. They're the thing that makes you better if you allow them to.
Jay Ford, what's your problem, dog? He's spurging. I think. It's hard to tell. I don't know if he's being sincere or if he's just talking shit.
Yeah, I don't either. There was another one here. Dagon says, man shapes history, woman is history. Spangler talks about this. And Kate said that's why men can't give women everything they say they want. They don't know unless they're told by a man what that is. If you get into a conversation if you get into the what do you want for dinner conversation, and well, I don't know, what do you want? You have fallen for the trap. We need to remind people of, because we've talked about this before, but I think the audience is larger now than it was before. The shit test. This is a shit test. If you've never heard of this, it's going to transform your life. A shit test, a manufactured grievance a woman uses to test the mettle, competence, and confidence of her mate. It is an intentional provocation accompanied by an implicit and subconscious desire that the man put his foot down, set reasonable boundaries, and demonstrate that he will not be bullied, nagged, shamed, or guilted into submission. Its purpose is to confirm for her that he is capable of doing what needs to be done to provide for and protect her and her children. The subconscious thought process is, if he can't stand up to me, how will he be able to deal with the cavemen down the valley who keep us up all night revving their motorcycles, let alone help bring down a mastodon or fend off the saber-toothed tigers? The worst thing a man can do when his woman is shit-testing him is assume the grievance is genuine and cave into her. Despite her seeming demand that he submit, if he does, she will lose respect for him. And once she loses respect for him, she will believe that she's with a man who is not worthy of her, which in turn makes her angry and resentful of him. She will then escalate the tests, each grievance becoming more and more outrageous and irrational in a desperate bid for him to finally draw a line and say, this far, no further. And where I diverge from a lot of the red pill culture, and a lot of it is not the original stuff, but it's like the downstream of it where it's been watered down, is they assume that this is like a bug in feminine psychology. Like, this is them malfunctioning. Oh, stupid women, they do this shit testing thing, and they're, because they're fundamentally broken, and what are you going to do about it? No. This is what they were created for. This is how they are debugging your code. They're shit testing you literally to test your integrity. The fact that women shit test does not make them broken. It means they're functioning properly as they should. It's your responsibility as a man to recognize when it's a shit test and to respond appropriately. If a man shit tests another man, the man is broken. Shit testing a man as a man is gay. Men are not supposed to do that because men and women are different. Women are supposed to shit test. This is how they ensure that you are continually up to the task and that you're not getting lazy and falling back on your, resting on your laurels, so to speak. Another related video that I've got here. I don't know if my take on this is going to be controversial or not. This chick, you guys may have seen this video going around. We'll play it for you real quick and then we'll talk about it.
I saw this really cute guy at the grocery store the other day, so naturally I followed him to the checkout counter, and when he gave the cashier his credit card, I peeped it to see what his name was. And then I Googled him and found his social media profiles, and I was able to tell that he was single. So I went through his friends list and I found his mother's page. And then I looked through his mother's page and I saw that she was a member of this book club that's in my area. So I sent a request to join the book club. So I went to the book club meeting and I met his mom there, and we bonded over some books that we both liked. And she just thought I was so nice, and I brought it up randomly in conversation that I was single. And she let me know that she had a son that was single also that lived in the area, and maybe it would be cool for us to get together and chat sometime. So I gave her my number, which she gave to her son, and this morning he texted me and asked if I'd like to get together this weekend and do something. So I guess we're gonna go on a date. I'm really excited.
Okay, leaving aside, is this real? Is she just doing this, making this up, or whatever? Like, just taking it at its face. I think this is very good and wholesome. This is very good, wholesome woman behavior. I think if a man did this, it'd be creepy. But with a woman doing this, this is great. This is fantastic. She's going to make a great wife and mother. Shout out to Caleb, White Trash Socrates. He agrees. He said, "This is good behavior. I will not explain." What do you think, Cooper? What's your take? Creepy or good? Wholesome?
It's probably fine.
Men and women are not the same.
Yeah, right. Okay, this is Straight Buster says it's only creepy because someone will inevitably do the what if the roles were reversed. That's what I was thinking. Like, at first I was like, kind of gave me a weird feeling in my gut, but then I was kind of, I don't know, maybe putting my brain, like, because I would feel weird if I were doing that, but I don't know.
Yeah,
if
I think
a chick is into me and, I don't know, goes through all the work of, like, finding out who my mom is and making friends with my mom at the book club and stuff like that. Like, okay.
Yeah, she's like, I want to be in this guy's life, and I'm going to figure out the way that I can get into this guy's life, and I'm going to get him to make the move for me, to come after me. Because for the man, the reason this would be creepy if it was a man is because the man should see her in line and be like, hey, you want to go out with me? Hey, do you want to go grab coffee? He needs to go to her directly, face to face, right then and there. Make the move, have the confidence, have the boldness, have the charisma to be able to make the move right then and there.
Well,
it's like a woman proposing to her husband, a woman proposing to her boyfriend is just, kill it with fire.
The feminine is like definitionally supposed to be kind of mysterious and elusive.
Yes. Yes.
In not explicit.
Uh-huh. We're reading more into it than may be there, but we'll just, for the fun of it, we'll keep it going. She is visualizing her life with him and what that will be like and how she will be able to pour herself into him, make her whole life revolve around him. Because as Josh said here in the chat, I don't remember exactly where it was. He said let me see if I can find it because he said it really well. There's too many comments. He said that basically, here it is. He says women want everything, thus the man has to level up. It's not really for her, it's for you because you want to become the man she wants you to be. The man she sees, the potential man that she sees, the reason that she's shit testing, the reason that she's doing all this like subversive, elusive, mysterious stuff is because she has this idealized picture of the future that she wants to happen. And that as a woman, she has an ability to see the future, have that gut woman's intuition to see what the thing could be. And the thing that she's seeing in you, you probably want that yourself. You want to be the man that she wants you to be. So she is in your life now to test your integrity and force you to either shy away from it, complain, and turn into nothing, or recognize the shit test, transcend it, and level up. This applies at the individual level. It also applies at the social level. The longhouse is a shit test. Yep. The longhouse is like a shit test socialized to the entire society. And yelling at it, getting upset at it, is like being mad that your wife won't pick a restaurant that she wants to go eat at. You failed. You failed the shit test. If you are mad that she just won't make up her mind, you have failed. In the same way that if you're mad that the longhouse exists and you're yelling at women about it, you are failing.
Yeah, I mean, the guys who bitch about the longhouse and stuff, like, I'm interested. What is your solution for you? You know, hypothetical guy, specifically. What is your solution for you? And I'm not like undoing, yada yada, women's suffrage. Like, you can get into all these grand sort of, we're gonna fix the world. Stop. Like, and I that's harebrained. I think that's really stupid. And anytime anybody's talking about trying to solve the world's problems, you're not a serious person. So, like, how are you solving this, or how would you solve this for you, practically speaking? Like, are you married? If not, do you have a girlfriend? If not, have you dated ever? No? Okay, so there's a roadmap. And then I think you start going down that road, and if you have any degree of success, or you trial and error it out, at some point you'll realize the woman suffrage thing is kind of irrelevant.
Well, that's actually a very good segue into the other thing that I had here. I just want to highlight.
Hey, maybe if all of our dudes, the young single autists, went and married a bunch of chicks, then maybe this whole women having the right to vote thing would be less of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you got a bunch of single women, you got a bunch of single men,
Mm-hmm.
Get them together, and then the problem is just kind of solved.
John says, I have no idea what she just said. All I know is that she's attractive and not annoying. that's probably the best takeaway. And Josh says, that's the woman who will absolutely read the ingredients to make sure my children are properly cared for. I would totally go for it. Beautiful. Josiah, we got to highlight a Josiah thing. If it comes to men and women, I gotta see what Josiah has to say. He says, you don't know what you want? You must not be a man. Woman wants man. Default state of male is not man, it is boy, and boy is feminine vis-a-vis man. Man is aspirational something men become by effort. Woman wants man. If you don't know what you want, you're not a man. This is why she's shit testing you. What do you want? Because she wants what you want, ultimately. Okay, so there's no way I'm going to keep up with all the comments here. So Uncle Doomer posted this video. I'm not going to subject you guys to it this time. We've seen this woman before. I won't put you through that. He says, when I see videos like this, it occurs to me that a non-insignificant number of Americans would probably rather die in battle than be ruled over by these types of people. And for that reason, the coming years may potentially become very interesting. For those who don't know, this is the chick who was on the Zoom call talking about, she's the elementary school teacher that does all the TikToks. She's like a paid DNC operative that is the most insufferable person on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And got a green text here. Women leaning left, men leaning right. This is a problem. You see, the reason we have elections is because they are a cheaper proxy than war. In elections, the biggest side wins, which would probably be the case with war too. But in elections, no one dies and you don't have to spend money on weapons, etc. So it's a good proxy. Politics and war being on a continuum. However, it doesn't work when one side is significantly weaker than the other, such as when women are on one side and men on the other. In this case, even if the women outnumber the men and would win an election, the women would not win in a war. And so the proxy is no longer an adequate proxy. And if we were to switch from elections to war, it would be one side that is mostly women against another side that is mostly men. Men would win easily with very small casualties. So why would men consent to be ruled by elections when they could more easily win a war? This is why women never should have been allowed to vote. It nullifies elections as proxies for war, and we end up having to have war instead. I thought this is very interesting. I'd never thought about it this way. That having women vote actually, by definition, undermines the very premises of voting as an institution in the first place. Because the whole premise of it is, well, we could have a war, or we can just simulate the war by voting. But then you have women vote, and you inevitably get yourself back to war again. Because the whole notion is just completely flawed from the jump. All right. Where are we at? 208. All right, I got a couple more things here. You have any last thoughts on that subject?
No, not really.
Okay.
Nothing that we haven't already talked about a million times.
Okay. Oh, there's a banger. Andrew, if you're complaining about the longhouse, frankly, you belong in it. Boom, I say. Stormy Waters. He says, effort post. It's not just Silicon Valley. So when we've talked about the PayPal Mafia thing, I've said that you can see very clearly if you're listening to like Mark Andreessen, Ben Horowitz, the way that some of these guys are talking, it's very obvious that they are, whether consciously or unconsciously, effectively a front for military interests. And then X, Elon taking over X the way he did was effectively a strategic military move.
I gotta go get my daughter from the bus stop. So,
okay, sounds good.
Later, everybody.
See you, boss. So this is getting at what I've been talking about. Stormy Waters says it's not just Silicon Valley. There is this whole other power faction that has come out of the background and gotten behind Trump and against the regime, and no one is paying attention, and they should be. Had a very interesting conversation tonight with a very politically retarded boomer, but only politically. Everything else, he's brilliant. Guy was the chief investment officer for big U.S. prime banks for 30 years. Dude spent a good chunk of night talking about how now more money is flowing into private markets than public for the first time in 80 years. Which is no surprise to Martin, I think it means Martin Armstrong, who predicted this 40 years ago, but that's kind of burying the lead. Private equity isn't Wall Street. A lot of them aren't even located in New York and have a 10x higher concentration of Gentiles in leadership with a much more long-term outlook. These guys invest in something. They can't just trade it away the next day, hour, or minute when they invest. They're in for a decade. And the size is staggering, much more than people assume. Larry Fink and BlackRock don't have shit on the Carlyle Group. Fink managing pensions, swapping them between the same 100 stocks to chisel fractions of percentage points and fees, that isn't liquid capital or deployable capital. So when it comes to being able to stroke checks and put money to work, Carlyle Group dwarfs Fink. Glenn Youngkin, who, if you remember, was my prediction for vice president, he was the current governor of Virginia. Glenn Youngkin was the head of Carlyle Group, and he has really as much of the inheritor of the Trump without Trump mantle as DeSantis. Carlyle Group and a small handful of others are super clicked up with the defense contractors, but the private defense contractors, like very close. The big unwieldy dinosaur bureaucracies that are the big unwieldy dinosaur bureaucracies that are the publicly traded dumpster fires like Lockheed, Boeing, and Raytheon, those are just assemblers of the various platforms and systems made by hundreds of lightly smaller but infinitely more low-key private ones. That's all Carlyle Group and other lesser nobles. This is a rising power faction as much as any of the Silicon Valley bros that have been getting so much attention in our circles lately, and they're a faction people need to be paying attention to. Because again, private equity is not Wall Street. Not everything that has the word fund at the end is kind of all just the same thing. Hedge funds, venture capital funds, private equity funds. These three funds have entirely different kinds of people from different places with totally different ideological outlooks and paradigms to each other. Same with the Texas oil money. This was one of the biggest power factions in U.S. politics in the 80s and 90s. They didn't just go away, they just grew even bigger and got a lot more low-key. Trump's first Secretary of State was Rex Tillerson, the former chairman of fucking Exxon. We've toppled whole governments for Exxon in the 70s and 80s. He would later move to energy secretary after he got what he wanted. Texas oil money is like private equity, largely Gentile leadership and ownership, regionally based with their own specific foreign and domestic policy initiatives. The Texas oil money are very intertwined with Carlyle Group. They swap executives and board members all the time. Hell, George Bush was on Carlyle's board, and it was oil money and Carlyle that pushed him into office. The neocons didn't hijack his administration till after 9/11. As Larry Johnson lays out conclusively on a recent episode with Pete Quinones, up until 9/11, the number one priority of the Bush administration was ballistic missile defense. That's why they torched the ballistic missile defense on the first day. They were trying to do missile shit. That's all they were talking about. It's all Washington was talking about, not the Middle East and not counterterrorism. This gets back to what I've been saying, that if you automatically equate military with neocon, you've lost the plot. Not everyone who's involved in military funding, financing, development, weapons manufacturing, or is willing to use the military is automatically a neocon. The neocons took over. They inserted themselves and using diplomacy and NGOs wrestled control of this away from what Moldbug would have referred to as Red America. So the neocons are part of Blue America, even though they were wearing the Red America costume for a while. But Red America never went away. There is a Red America still there. They've gone dark. And these guys are not, my point here and Stormy's point here is not that these guys are secretly super based and they're just hiding deep undercover. No, they have their own interests. They have a strong vested interest in America maintaining strong national defense and protecting its own industries. Their wealth is directly under assault. Their interests, their property, their assets are directly under assault by the Blue America, State Department, Davos, World Economic Forum, EU, NATO, that whole coalition that has formed the heart of the regime. So if this regime is determined to absolutely decimate the continent and the people within the continent of North America, these guys don't want that to happen. They're going to make moves to ensure that doesn't happen for their own sake. These aren't like some benevolent-based secret right-wingers, although there are those forces are represented in there. It's just like the Silicon Valley guys. They're seeking to protect their own interests so that they can grill, i.e., shoot skyscrapers into space. And it just so happens that them protecting their own interests has the effect of protecting and promoting our interests. And he goes on here. This guy replies, says, interesting. I fear that where the defense contracting comes in, they might have a detrimental effect on the America First isolationism of Trump, but he's resisted that before to a certain extent. This guy says, isolationism is better for defense contractors. It's more technology focused. We'll need more ships and planes and satellites to be about to project strength like the Great White Fleet and respond to skirmishes like the Quasi-War and Barbary Pirates or Operation Praying Mantis. And Stormy said, this is the literal truth. And I can tell you, Stormy is very well connected. He's a small account, but pay attention to the small accounts. Our small account brothers out there, many of them are, they may be small online, but they aren't offline. This guy says, I find your historical analogies compelling, but they are all at least 100 years old, if not 200. In practical terms today, it's silly that less foreign engagement would be preferred by global export-oriented merchants of war. And Stormy says, thank you for your analysis that you spent zero time on versus, let's say, mine, which came from 2 weeks of talking with the guy currently in charge of the U.S. hypersonic missile program. As you can see from my post above, the U.S. defense establishment's priority at the time of 9/11 was missile and missile defense, space systems, electronic warfare, and directed energy weaponry. This is why George W. Bush got us out of the ballistic missile treaty with Russia in the first months of his presidency. The Russians didn't like that, obviously, but there's not much they can do about it. However, Benjamin Netanyahu and his friends decided to help some Arabs fly planes into buildings and sent us on a 10-year boondoggle to the Middle East, forcing all of our tech developments and prioritization into counterterrorism and a bunch of bullshit that only works against Hajis and flip-flops and AK-47s, and not against a pure military. In case you haven't noticed, there's no more guys in flip-flops with AK-47s to fight, and the only threat landscape consists of pure competitors. That's a big problem, genius, because the Russians and the Chinese didn't go spend 10 years in the desert working on technology that's only useful against goat herders and farmers with small arms and a couple RPGs. And because of this decade wasted, the Russians and the Chinese are ahead of us in both missile technology, missile defense technology, electronic warfare, and directed energy weapons. So this puts us in a really bad spot if that isn't obvious, because you can't go play world police with your carrier group all around the planet, policing the shipping lanes and making sure the world is safe for trade, benefiting only other nations, the free riders, is over. Not only because of its gargantuan cost to a rapidly financially insolvent United States, but also it's dumb. Supercarriers are a floating trillion, and now desert tribes like the Houthis or Hezbollah can render it useless with a handful of hypersonic missiles, not only likely killing the 3,000 sailors aboard them and sinking a nuclear reactor to the bottom of the ocean, $500 billion in air assets on board are neutralized. If you can neutralize all of that equipment with a couple of missiles towed behind your Toyota Hilux, then we have a big problem. Which brings me to my point. We can no longer afford to police the world for the benefit of everyone else. That money being spent policing is not being spent on developing technology. Not to mention, world police technology is only useful when you're fighting camels. Entirely different technology is needed when you're facing down peer competitors. So the Monroe Doctrine is exactly what we will be doing, because I imagine not only do you not know anything about defense policy, you probably don't know anything about energy policy either. Because if you did, you would know that Exxon found an oil field bigger than Saudi Arabia off the coast of Ghana recently. This is why Venezuela, with its shit oil that no one can even refine, invaded Ghana recently. So the U.S. military doesn't really see the benefit of making the world safe for a bunch of Saudis that are kind of high maintenance and offer little here at home on our continent. Will the defense contractors sell their weapon systems to foreign militaries and foreign conflicts abroad? Absolutely, as they should. It's a business. We just won't be going to fight. You can send us your money, but we will no longer be sending you ours. This is why the current neocon policy establishment and the State Department have actually become a threat to national security, because wars for Israel and Ukraine mean no money for the technology development that is needed. If this technology does not get developed, as soon as the next war starts, we lose. And as soon as our enemies are confident in that information, they will start it, not us. Now, they've continued on here since I saw this. So he says, besides the boomer ad hominem against me, I agree with most of your points, especially with regards to the Bush ABM treaty cancellation and area denial of modern war. My point is that Eric Prince types are also the type to drag you into, i.e., Venezuela or Syria, where you have no business. He says, what are you talking about? Seriously, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Please tell me about the Syria policy of the Eric Prince types. Or just say you don't know what you're talking about, or just say nothing. Don't get all hurt because you got over your skis. 2 seconds on Google. He says, yes, private contractors. Right now, U.S. forces are being paid for a tremendous cost to ensure the steady flow of Syrian oil to Israel for the benefit of a company called Genie Energy. The whole campaign against us in Syria was for the benefit of this company because it wanted to run a pipeline through all of Israel, Syria, and Kurdistan. With no energy part of, if you listen to Stormy, he talks about how he's basically, like, he's dyslexic, and when it comes to writing, he's basically illiterate. And I think he does voice to text, so sometimes I have to try to interpret what he's saying. with no energy is now the sixth largest energy export. So U.S. forces are subsidizing a third of Israel's GDP. If you look at who's on the board of Genie Energy, you'll understand why Eric Prince has to say, well, we can just not spend $750 billion a year on it. And if we spend only a couple billion, can that couple billion be spent on me, please? The people behind Genie Energy are the people behind the regime. Also, the people that own that pipeline from Norway to Poland that opened the same day Nord Stream closed. They're very dangerous people. Pay attention to what Stormy is dropping. He has very good sources. And he knows what he's talking about. There was one other thing that he said here that I wanted to highlight right here. So this guy said, how would you respond to Trump critics saying he's been conquered by the current system, the regime? And he said, I usually don't. Some people find great comfort in the black pill. Anyone dumb enough to think this is just elaborate theater just for them is a waste of time. There's no power without competition for power, forever and always. So if the regime has power, they have competition. And he said most people don't move in the circles you move, so it's hard for them to feel hopeful while going about day-to-day life and seeing how things are changing for the worse. And he said, from here on out, I'll do my best to fix this. And then he quote tweeted this. And he said, when you're a grown-ass man and a Twitter post knocks the wind out of you harder than that time 12-year-old you fell out of a tree. This hurt my heart. From here on out, I'll make a point to share as much as I know in detail. There is much to be hopeful for. So go follow Stormy at Norman Dodd _new. NORMANDODD _KNEW. Make sure I didn't close a tab here incidentally. Okay. All right, I've got one last thread and then a tweet to send you guys off with. Yeah, he said Ghana, but he meant Guyana. That's correct. Again, I think that's probably him using voice to text. Yeah, Josiah, Carlisle group going to help MAGA by opposing leftism. The synchronicity with Thomas Carlyle is cool. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. And I tried to find more Carlyle stuff. I just searched Twitter to see what was being talked about, and I got a whole bunch of Thomas Carlyle results. Javier says, like almost everything else, the neocons, liberals, and progressives don't create, but they take over existing good institutions and movements and use them for evil. Correct. Josiah says, Fabian Society logo went from a wolf in a sheep's coat to a turtle, blue to red, revolution to long march. What's Malice say about Con Inc? Yeah, progressives driving the speed limit. Steady and slow is tantamount to just saying stop without ever turning the wheel. Yes. Vagrant of roads. So, Trump went on with Theo Vaughn. We talked about that on the show here. Christy Yamaguchi Main said, it's so fucking funny watching Trump react to someone being normal in conversation. It throws him off so much. And it's clear he thinks all drugs are uppers since all he's ever done is amphetamines, has no concept of depressants. This is fantastic imagination. I'm really concerned about the state of mind of someone who would watch this and have this takeaway. Vagrant says, quick thread, society's perception of normal is so corrupted by leftist degeneracy that people are incapable of conceptualizing healthy human behavior. In this case, normal grandfatherly innocence is anathema to their regulated, dysgenic, nihilistic interpretation of the world. Something similar happened when Trump survived the assassination. Libs repeatedly refused to believe it happened because they can't conceptualize courage. Why would he stand and raise his fist? I would never do that. Must be fake. Their minds are too small to understand it. These are the same people who watch Lord of the Rings and go, Frodo is totally gay. Did you see that gay look he gave Sam? He's totally into it. They're inherently broken. Their souls are corrupted beyond comprehension. It's best to just ignore their nihilistic prattling. But at some point, we have to discuss if these people are a different species altogether. There's certainly no point in trying to live near them or share a nation with them. They don't even believe in life or in nations as concepts, hence why they're happy to destroy both. We don't even have a way to communicate with them. Our words float past them uselessly. They occupy an entirely fictional world constructed out of an obsessive nihilistic self-worship which leaves no room for reflection. Most of them cannot be changed or convinced otherwise. This leads eventually to the shift of the Overton window in regards to normality itself. Hence why they see grandfatherly innocence as weird. It's likely they don't have a normal relationship with someone like this in their life, so the entire event becomes foreign to them. What makes this situation so unique is that leftists have no interest whatsoever in trying to bridge their lack of knowledge or experience with others. They've lost their innate human inquisitiveness, which has been trained out by addictive nihilistic social status posturing. For example, a person from a bad upbringing might wonder what it's like to have grown up in a healthy household with two parents. But leftists instead convince themselves that having two parents is weird, forcing the rest of society to conform to their warped view via threat. Eventually, they invert society entirely, and the whole thing becomes incapable of holding itself together. The abnormal people begin abusing and chasing the normality out of all systems and institutions, actively seeking to eradicate any reminders of their aberrative existence. Hence, we come to the event horizon of the lib singularity, the spiteful erasure of normal people and normal life through an incessantly combative and aggressively genocidal campaign of population replacement, grooming, regulation, propaganda, etc., to enact social control. This is a evergreen tweet from Mystery Grove. Reminder, communism is when ugly, deformed freaks make it illegal to be normal, then rob and or kill all successful people out of petty resentment and cruelty. The ideology is all just window dressing. Bio-Leninism. Eventually, the normal people are all killed or forced by social bayonets to adopt the new social order. It's a forced conversion. Trust collapses, drug use spikes, crime spreads, families break, incompetence and degeneracy become accepted, etc. Total societal collapse. The solution isn't to try and convince these people of obvious truths, like the fact that it's normal for someone to have an innocent reaction to discussing drug use. We know they won't interpret that as normal because they're not capable of doing so. Don't waste your breath. The solution instead is to overwhelm these people and remove them from all forms of social power. You can't convince a self-worshipping fiend to think about others, or a drooling cur to be nice, or a coward to not run. But you can ignore their demands and run them out of town. Ultimately, the pattern of behavior they've locked themselves into, denying reality, spirals into a nihilistic coping mechanism. Nothing matters to them. We don't have to live under their Reddit tier edgelordism. We can make something new that they have no say in. Doing so requires power and force of will, and a thorough understanding of all the old eternal human behavioral concepts libs and the many conservatives desperate for their approval have lost touch with. We must do so. Our very survival as a species depends on it. And then, interestingly, he says the many conservatives desperate for their approval, and then notes, turned this thread into a piece for Federalist. Check it out if you're interested in a longer read. Make America normal again. So shout out to Vagrant, powerful mutual, found himself a platform. Good for him. I've had that one in the hopper to share for a while, and it seemed to fit in here well. And so now, at last, we get to the final tweet. This is I thought of this in mind of the, for example, the people who say that Tucker Carlson can't possibly be our friend because he doesn't name them publicly. That whole sentiment. These people are retarded. Terry Shapert says, unconventional warfare requires patience and timing. You don't swing for the fences right away, you'll die. You build alliances, networks, and logistics. Risk versus gain. Hit small confidence targets. Success leads to bigger success. Win the crowd. The killing blow is way down the road. All the people who are looking for the burn it down option, the people who are looking for the get all of our, like, the determination of whether or not someone is an ally of ours is just how much they're willing to go cannonballing past outside the Overton window. And if they're not willing to do that across all of my favorite subjects sufficiently, then they can't be a friend. These are people who are encouraging us to do things that will definitely lead to our own self-destruction. We have to be wise. Straight Buster says, how have our guys not read The Art of War? Because they're really just not very bright. They're stupid people. Whether they're actively malevolent or not doesn't really matter. They're just stupid. Many of them are just young. They're young guys who've got, dealing with hormones, don't know what to do about it, and they have various people who will encourage them to mouth off in public and say, oh, this is the way to do it. Be angry and disgruntled and try to force everyone into public radical extremism. The worst of these people are the ones who aren't on the payroll, who decide to be feds for free because they're that retarded. They must be shunned, ostracized, forced out of polite society. We must restore polite society, and it will require prudence and wisdom and a willingness to put in the work for the long term. The killing blow is way down the road. We're not remotely equipped for the killing blow. We have to, at a very minimum, we have to develop a new mythology. I thought about this yesterday with the RFK ad that we played at the end of the show yesterday. I was musing on this, that it almost is like they're engaged in this process of creating a new founding mythology, and that this mythology is something around the JFK assassination. This is a kind of a half-baked thought, so I haven't fully thought it through. But I think that whatever this interim republic that we're moving into, France has all their different republics. We're moving into a new stage, a fifth or sixth or whatever it is, American republic. I've said before that I think 50 to 100 years is probably the timeline where we're looking at the complete transformation. We're seeing a realignment right now. And I think part of this realignment may be, instead of realigning around the Nuremberg regime, it's realigning around something like the civil rights regime and JFK. That era, that point in time. This has to do probably with the death of the boomers, bringing back this nostalgia as a last gasp. They're trying to recover the spirit of their youth. And RFK picking up the mantle, continuing the work, or whatever they said on the thing. I think perhaps this interim period that we experience for the next couple decades is going to revolve the establishment of a new, temporary, new founding mythology. And then whatever comes after that is going to be an evolution on that. Just some thoughts on that. As I said, it's half-baked. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. But for now, just hit the 2.5-hour mark, so we're going to wrap it there. We got 127 watching still, 66 likes. Do me a favor, hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Turn the notification bell on. It's not super reliable. If you want a more reliable notifier of when I'm going to be going live, you can either follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled for free, or you can pay to join the KingPilled Discord at kingpilled.com. That's a great way for you to support the show, ensuring that I can keep coming out here and doing this for you guys. And as Taylor says, join the Discord, kingpilled.com. And lastly, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. Throw some shekels my way there. And as I head out, of course, I will give you Hulk.
They're my hero. And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America